Superintendent, I'll let you introduce our guests for the insurance workshop.
Okay, happy to do so. Welcome, everyone. The purpose of this special workshop that we're holding this evening is for us to examine the FSHIP program, and I believe that all the board members have been briefed individually. And today we're going to give the opportunity to expand on that conversation, ask specific questions as a board, learn more. If anyone from the community comes in and wants to ask questions, obviously they are welcome to do so as well. We won't take any official action during the workshop. The action will be on the regular agenda item and then at the regular scheduled meeting starting at 5:30. So I know that I believe everyone has met everyone in the room. However, I know I'll turn it over to Darren Bryan and with a veil, and he'll begin the presentation and he can introduce as we go and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swim, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you. Good to see you all again. I thought we would jump into maybe the presentation because that's something that we all had a good conversation, but I really didn't go through the presentation a lot. Make sure that it's something that we did share with the insurance committee, so I thought it'd be good that the board would probably see most of it too. But a couple things that we may or may not have gotten into some conversation about when I was speaking with you guys is Jim and I aren't here to sell anything, and just kind of want to give you a little bit of background on kind of what we're presenting for anyone that hasn't heard. So about a year and a half ago, our Avail Benefits clients, Hardy Schools and DeSoto Schools, asked us to start looking for some way of risk sharing with my school districts. And so we started digging into that a little bit. And this is the accumulation of that. So about 18 months worth of work is the FSHIP program. FSHIP is part of the Florida School Board Insurance Trust, right? And so FSHIP is their medical program inside of PhysGet. So just some clarification points there. No pressure on you guys tonight. You guys are a January 1st renewal date. Hardy and DeSoto Schools, who their boards have already taken action to kind of move forward, and it's really very similar to the action that we're kind of asking you guys tonight, is just to take a good faith step so that because there's legal dollars that are spent in developing these agreements and contracts in FSHIP. So if you guys are wanting to move forward and we can begin working on some of those agreements and contracts so that we'll come back to you with hard numbers in September so that you'll have the opportunity to say, no, we don't want anything about this in September because the numbers just don't look right, and or you can push forward then. That will be, in September, will be really the hard yes or no that we'll have to know by then. So again, it's what tonight's agenda piece is really just letting the FSHIP team know, hey, the board's really serious about this and we're willing to put some more legal money into this and get these contracts and everything developed. But we have time. We have time. Introductions. You guys met me a little bit, and with me tonight is Jim Powell from Alliant, and we have one more person named Joe Logan who came and has met with administration. But Joe's not with us tonight. He got sick. He's now probably COVID's going around. Who knows what it is, right? But he couldn't be with us tonight. So Jim and I will be trying to do the presentation, and we'll try to be as good as Joe in the numbers. But we think they're really good, and we're excited to be able to talk to you about it. This is a big piece of the risk sharing program. And the reason why we call it the risk sharing program is because that's really what we're trying to get to, is risk sharing. That's the special program that's taken us 18 months to develop. Because as far as we know, there isn't a risk sharing program in the state of Florida that has the autonomy that's built into this, so that this district can remain its own district and not having to use interlocal agreements and having to use a consortium like HEC or PACE and having to use the lead district's benefits as yours. Remember, this piece is about you being able to choose your insurance carrier, Aetna, who you have now, you being able to choose them if you would like, choosing your benefits, allowing your union and collective bargaining to continue to negotiate that, and that's something that typically doesn't happen in the current consortium's risk sharing programs in the state of Florida for school districts. Matter of fact, there isn't a risk-sharing program that we know of in the state of Florida for any governmental unit that allows that autonomy to take place. So that's why it's been a long time. It's taken us a while to develop it. We've got hurdles that we had to get over, and those were major hurdles. We expect this to be minimal, if at any, impact to the employees if you do switch. So the current benefit structure you currently have with Aetna stays the same, unless you all decide to change that. There's no administrative load to your finance department or HR department. There's not an expectation for you to hire 2 or 3 people to administer the program. There's some contract effectuation, which we talked about a little bit as individuals, that I'll go into a little bit deeper about what that means in the risk-sharing program, but not to enter into the initial stages of the FSHIP program. The layer 1, remember there was 2 layers. Layer 1 was when you come in, we call it level 1, where you join the FSHIP program, you take advantage of everything inside the FSHIP program that it allows. Pharmacy program, remember that was a big piece. But then to get to the risk sharing, the level 2 is when you have to kind of earn your way in. And by having a wellness program, for example, that's measurable and showing lots of good results, that you have some contract effectuation, you have things that are helping members to understand and learn more about their insurance. Things like that have to be applied for, have to be shown in good faith before we let anyone jump into the risk sharing piece. And please, if any during this time you have a question.
You said something about wellness program.
Yes, sir.
You said something about that. Give me a little bit more.
Tell you a little bit more?
Yeah.
So this program is modeled after Charlotte schools and Hardy schools, their wellness programs. I mean, the wellness piece is. And so when I say wellness, I'm talking about where the district will be expected to try to do everything it can to mitigate claims. So for example, we know that a lot of rural school districts in the state of Florida have an obesity-related illness issue, right? And so maybe type 2 diabetes. What are we doing as a district to try to limit that or educate our folks, everyone, not targeting anyone, but everyone about obesity-related illness and making good decisions when it comes to going to the right doctor, when it comes to eating the right foods, when it comes to making sure that you are on the right meds. A wellness program would encompass all of that. Not just walking. It's not just watching a video on knowing what to eat. That won't work. So we will, at Avail Benefits, or whoever you choose to help you, doesn't have to be Avail, but we will help work with you from an FSHIP perspective to help you develop that wellness program if you don't already have one in place. But if you don't have one, the level 2 piece of the risk sharing will never be able to qualify. So you won't be able to get into the risk sharing. So what we're saying is, if you're going to share your losses with other school districts, then you got to be willing to work hard to keep your claims down. And a wellness program is part of that.
We got to be able to present some data showing what we've done.
Sir?
We got to present some data to them to show what we've done.
Sort of, yes, sir. We'll audit. We'll come in and say, tell us a little bit more about your wellness program, and we'll make sure there's certain pieces of it that we'll make sure that you're checking boxes, that the data that you provide is measurable, that we can see that it's having an effect on the group, that it's not just saying, hey, Aetna said we have a wellness program, and they have someone who comes and talks once a year about it. Okay. That won't work, right? It'll have to be more than that, but we'll help you get into that. Okay. The Hardy and Charlotte wellness programs are ones that members have to qualify. They have to do certain things throughout the year in 4 different domains. Or like I said, education. There's an awareness piece. There's an engagement piece that they all have to do certain little things. And once they do, they qualify for a certain maybe carrot or stick. The carrot could be they get $500 extra, or maybe they have to pay more in premium. They've got a tobacco cessation program, right? So to help people stop using tobacco. That would probably be a big piece of being able to risk share, is that if we had folks that if you guys said, it's okay if someone uses tobacco in this program, fine, but they probably need to pay more money because it's a different risk. And that's an example of a wellness program. I'm not saying that has to be for Hendry. That's just something that is in place in the other groups that we would expect to have to be able to audit and make sure. Because, same thing, if Hendry's working really, really hard on trying to mitigate their claims, you wouldn't want us to let in a group to and you wouldn't want to share some of their risks if they're just sitting there doing nothing, right? They don't really care about trying to mitigate their claims, and they don't really care about if anyone's trying to be healthy or not. They're just going to rack up costs, and you're going to have some of those. That's not going to work, right? We want it to be that if you're going to join in, and that's the level 2 piece. If you all decide, and we'll get into that, but if you all decide that you never want to get into level 2, that you only want to stay level 1, where you just want to enter FSHIP and take advantage of the things that FSHIP brings, the pharmacy program or some of the economies of scale, that's fine, but you'll be missing out on some of the risk sharing that other districts may. Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Aaron?
Yes.
Do you do this for like other, like municipalities or counties, or is it just, school district?
This is only for school districts.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Only for. And we're starting with the HEC schools first. Only. Well, I should say only. There may be one, there's Levy Schools has asked, and they're already self-funded, so it's not a big jump for them. They just want to hear more about it. There could be a couple in the Panhandle that still are interested, but it's rural Florida school districts first. Yes, ma'am. Cost-saving opportunities, we talked about that just a little bit. The individual district benefit customization is so important. That is what separates this program from all the others. The lowering the long-term claims, the volatility. So one of the things that when you go self-funded, you build a reserve. That if it's properly predicted correctly, if the actuarial group, Jim and Joe, do a good job of forecasting your losses, there's going to be a reserve that's going to be built that's going to help you with those years that you may deserve a 10% rate increase, and then you all of a sudden you have a 2, and then you get a 12, and those are hard on a finance department, right? And so when you become self-funded, it begins to smooth that a little bit because you can use some of your reserves to help pay that and pay those, and it keeps those unexpected losses from hurting so bad when you've got a little bit of a place, you've got firewood built up. And so that's a big piece of this program. The risk sharing among districts is huge. There's not another program in the state of Florida that does that. And when you do enter into the risk sharing program, there's an opportunity for a dividend or a return on investment. So as every district puts money into that risk sharing layer, if there's money left over, then the entities get to decide what's going to happen with that. It can come back into your reserve, it can stay in that layer, and FSHIP team will work with you on how you want that. There could be years that they say, hey, you got to put a little bit more in, because every district's had a bad year. That's when we share risk. It could be that, right? But there's pieces of this program that are built in to protect Hendry schools. If Hendry schools has a bad year next year, it's not going to hurt Hardy. If Hardy has a terrible year next year, Hendry schools is not going to be affected by that. As long as you're in the level 1, then you're standing on your own 2 feet. You're self-funding using the FSHIP program as your kind of your administrator of that. So there's no worries about any other district having an impact on you until you start risk sharing. The establishment of preferred networks, and we talked about this a little bit when I was able to meet with you guys about the maximizing of local healthcare delivery systems. If there's, as you guys currently sit being fully funded, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to try and establish sidecar clinics or special discounts with other doctors, because it still costs the district extra money. You're already transferring money to Aetna. Now when you become self-funded, it could make sense to do some of this with local providers here in Clewiston and or LaBelle. Year 1, possibly year 2, it's really year 2, I don't think year 3, but for sure year 1, most likely year 2, you'll stay self-funded and you won't risk share. We feel like 2 years is probably going to be the best for the program to have each district kind of stand on their own 2 feet for at least 2 years before we offer the risk sharing program to districts. But that is the goal. That is the goal. So risk, chance of something unwanted happening, risk transfer. This is what you guys do now, the contractual shifting of a pure risk to one party to another. So right now, you guys are fully funded. You transfer all of your risk to Aetna, right? Except for the part that the employees hold with deductible, right? Deductible out-of-pocket maximum. They have to pay that. Then from there, all the way up through, you pay a monthly premium, which turns into an annual premium that you pay Aetna to take on all that risk, and they pay all your claims. What's good about that? That's the most you'll have to pay, right? What's bad about it is that if you don't use all that, guess what that turns into? That's profit for them, right? So what we're trying to build back is that control back to you all, so that you all are keeping that and not having to give it to Aetna. We'll rent Aetna's network, right? So we're not planning on not staying with Aetna unless you guys decide to leave them. But if you guys say, look, how do we keep Aetna? Because we're going to say, Aetna, we'd like to take your power that you're using on your doctors and we want to rent that from you for a per member or per employee per month fee. So instead of paying an annual premium to them to transfer all that risk, we're going to retain some risk and we're going to rent that network. So we're going to risk retention is an individual organization decision to take financial responsibility for a particular risk it faces. And what we're talking about now is medical, our medical risk, not dental, not vision. This is only our medical insurance, right? So we're going to retain some of that risk. Risk financing is the strategy. Right now we use fully insured as our strategy. We transfer that risk to Aetna. We're going to talk about retaining that risk now and self-funding. So risk sharing is the ultimate goal of this whole program in a couple of years. Not year one, not year two, but year three, let's think. Year three, if things go well, Hendry School likes what they're doing, they're comfortable with it, it's going like we predicted it would be, then we're thinking, okay, if you guys want to go risk sharing, then FSHIP audits you, make sure that you meet those requirements, boom, we jump into risk sharing, you're sharing a certain layer of your risk with all the other member districts, perhaps in the whole state of Florida. I talked about fully funded, self-funded. Right now we're fully funded, we transfer all that to Aetna. Self-funded is what we're going to talk about now, and that we're not going to be truly self-funded. We're still going to transfer some risk to the employees and our out-of-pocket maximum our deductibles. And then Jim's going to talk a lot about I guess the safety measures we're going to put in from a risk transfer of catastrophic risk, anything that could hurt us big time. And Pastor Brown, you talked about that with me a lot, about how you were worried about what happened in the past and how we built protections in to not let that happen anymore. And I think Mr. Paul asked me those same, well, everyone did really. Claims banding, talk to you a little bit about that, because that is where I'll explain to you the risk sharing. So fully funded, really quick, this is an example of a fully funded or of a risk silo that's going to be fully funded. There's the risk transfer piece with the deductible of the employees. This is the piece we transfer to Aetna right now, and we call that a monthly premium. The risk change is when your risk gets worse or better, it changes, right? So if our risk gets worse because we have a terrible year of lots of high-cost claims, well, then Aetna says, guess what? Your risk has gotten worse, and we'll give you a renewal rate, which that hasn't been good the last few years, right? And so Mr. Swindle always tells me about his brother-in-law that lives down on the river that he gets mad at because of how sorry them old insurance companies are. So we're trying to bring that control, that profit that his brother-in-law has been making back to this district, right, is really what we're trying to do here. And so all this is a risk financing strategy, and the cost of that strategy is an annual premium, right? That's fully funded. So self-funded is almost exactly like that, except we're not going to pay Aetna anymore a profit. They'll make a profit in their ASO fees or the per employee per month, but not the same type of profit because they're not holding as much risk. The district now holds that risk. So self-funding basics, risk transfer, same thing. We're still going to ask the employees to hold a certain piece of that. You guys decide what that is, not FSHIP. That's collective bargaining, that's the board, that's you guys decide what that is. Then the risk retention is Hendry County Schools, up to what we call an ISL, or individual stop loss. And our ISL would be like $175,000, which is lower than your current, that I understand with that. You guys are at $250 right now with that. So we're $75,000 less in the FSHIP program that you'd be on the hook for as a district, right? So claims paid is that risk retention. So wait a minute, you're saying, Darren, that every claim that comes through now, Hendry Schools has to write a check to a doctor? No. Right now, you currently pay a monthly premium, Mrs. Cox and her team, to Aetna, right? And so now you're going to have a funding amount, a recommended funding amount that they will pay to FSHIP. And FSHIP will pay Aetna, and Aetna will pay those doctors. So it's not going to be claims paid that Hendry's going to have to start writing all these individual checks. It'll be a recommended funding amount that goes to FSHIP, and FSHIP pays that for them. Risk transfer, we talked about risk transfer. Wait a minute, what is that? That's the stop loss. That's everything that can be catastrophic, that could kill us in a budget scenario. That's where Jim and his team at FSHIP, they go out and they get risk transfer contracts of catastrophic, or we call stop loss insurance, that helps you sleep at night to make sure that we're not going to blow through anything. Kind of like in the fully insured world right now, you pay an annual premium a year. That's a lot of money. What if it goes over that? Well, then Aetna has to eat it, right? We're going to do the same thing. They're going to build stop loss protection so that if our losses go over a certain point, we're not going to have to eat them. They're going to be transferred to another insurance company, right? So it's insurance for our insurance. The risk change is the same. If our risk goes up, we have a terrible year of claims, the FSHIP teams come in and said, hey, listen, we recommend that you increase your funding, or maybe you use a little bit of your firewood you've got stacked up in reserves to not have, maybe not a 10% increase, but maybe a 3 or a 4. That's just your funding adjustment because of your risk change. We want the risk change to increase at a decreasing rate at FSHIP. So we know that it'll never go down. We know it'll never go to negative, unless it's just something happens where your population really shrinks or something like that. But if everything stays on course, our job at FSHIP is to help your risk change. Instead of being a really, really steep increase curve, but really a curve that increases but more at a decreasing rate than it is right now. That's the whole goal of the whole piece of getting into layer 2. Okay, claims banding basics really quick. 175 is the attritional claims. Those are the claims that you guys would retain. $0 to $175,000 is what Hendry owns. The marginal claims, really, you will own this for the first 2 years, but we'll reinsure this. This will be off with anything above 175 will go to another insurance company. So we're still not going to be on the hook for anything above 175. But this layer between 175 and 500,000 is what we're talking about in the FSHIP program as where we will share. So that would be where those costs come in, is that we're going to have to pay risk transfer. We're going to have to pay an insurance company to take this risk from us next year. But if we risk share, we're not paying anybody anything. We're putting money into a pot. And other districts are too, and claims are being paid out of that. So that's different, right? That's how we can hold that profit. And then the final layer of this is the catastrophic layer. And that's anything that blows out that high. We have someone that has $1 million claim and have a really bad car wreck or heart transplant, something like that. That could be where the district is only going to be on the hook for 175 of that. So this is the basic risk sharing model that we're trying to get to. Everything in red is catastrophic, even over on this side. And the reason why this is important is that we had to build in protections. Everyone that is coming into the FSHIP program, except for Charlotte schools, right now is fully funded. So they're used to having to pay an annual premium, and then if we can afford that, we don't have to worry about insurance for another year. And that's the risk transfer. Well, so we had to build our first few years giving you that same comfort, so that you didn't have a bunch of, let's say you had 20, $175,000, $200,000 claims. Now we're getting up there. And our aggregate loss, our total loss is starting to approach what our premium is. So we had to build something in that would give you some protections from an aggregate standpoint, the total spend of claims for the district. And that's what this part is, Pastor Brown. That's what you were asking me a lot about, was how do we not get on that hook for that, right? And so that's and Jim will talk about that being the ASL, and that's the aggregate stop loss. And so the attritional layer, remember, is the risk retention layer. This is from 0 to 175 is the risk that Hendry County schools will hold in the FSHIP program. The marginal layer, which we're going to transfer that off the first 2 years, but year 3, that's the risk sharing layer. And the red, anything over 500, even over all the way over to here is the aggregate piece, which Joe from Alliant calls the sleep at night insurance. So you guys can sleep at night, knowing that we're going to protect that.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. If we were in the risk sharing side of it,
Yes, sir.
the district is still on the hook for the up to 175.
Correct.
So if it's 485, then the risk sharing piece kicks in on the remainder from the 175 up to the 485.
100%.
And then if it goes above that, then that's when the stop comes in.
Yep.
So we pay the 480 regardless, with the risk sharing piece of it.
Correct. So the way it is, 100%, you're spot on in the way that's thinking. 175 we own, and then monthly we'll be paying into a recommended funding amount into that risk sharing pool. Let's say it's just 100 grand. right? I mean, that's not just for argument's sake, that the district puts $100,000 each month into this risk-sharing pool. Hardee puts 100, DeSoto puts 100, Okeechobee puts 100. Everybody's putting a recommended amount in there. And then from 175,001 up to 500,000, those claims are paid out of that pool. So Hendry Schools won't be really paying for it, the pool will be paying for it in the risk sharing. Yep. And so then if it takes a bad loss, then next year FSHIP comes back and says, hey, it looks like instead of 100,000, you need to put 200,000 in. Or, hey, everyone put in, there was $1 million in there, and we only had $700,000 worth of claims, so we're gonna take that 300 and we're gonna pro-ratably divide that up amongst each district. That's how the risk sharing piece works. And you can choose to keep it in the reserve if you want to help reduce your next year's annual funding, or you can bring it home. It's up to you guys, right? And the dollars, your account at FSHIP is yours. So it's not FSHIP's, right? So the dollars that are in that reserve belong to the district. So it's, FSHIP doesn't decide, hey, yeah, you got $1 million, but we're gonna keep some of that. No, it'll be straight up, that'll come off the very front, and Jim will talk about that in the ASO fees. So FSHIP, the money that you have in reserves to pay claims, that FSHIP pays those claims out of is Hendry County Schools in the account at FSHIP.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So just to summarize, and I'm gonna give it to Jim, this is really our takeaways. So if there's anything about the program, other than what I said at the beginning about start dates and things like that, it's a sharing of medical risk in the marginal claims band. That makes this unique to any program in the state of Florida as far as we know. And I can tell you that, and I work with other governmental units, there's no governmental units that have the autonomy that'll let you choose, for example, staying, the one the county has. The county uses public risk management right now. It's a risk sharing pool. But when you join that pool, you join Florida Blue. You use Florida Blue, and you've got about 6 plans that you can choose from. That's it. Everyone joins in together. It keeps the integrity of the pool stays the same. This program is not designed that way. This program is when you join FSHIP, you can choose whether you want to be with Aetna or Florida Blue or United Healthcare or Cigna. You get to choose your plan design. That's the autonomy that's built into this that no other program, and I emphasize that a lot because when it comes to procurement, it means something. That this is the only program that's doing this. And so each district, of course, chooses how they would like to. If they choose to engage with FSHIP, how you will legally join, those kind of things. The other 2 school districts have said, look, this is a single source issue for us. And it may not be for Hendry, but that is what Hardee and DeSoto have said. And we expect Okeechobee, most of the entities are kind of feeling that way. The ROI dividend in the marginal claims band is something that is very unique. For example, with Hendry County and their Board of County Commission, if there's a dividend in that pool, the group doesn't get that back. It stays in the pool. That reserve stays there, and there's a board of directors that decides whether or not Hendry County will get to use that to hold down their claims. It's not up to Hendry County. There's no individualization inside that pool. Very different than what we're talking about here. The economy of scale opportunity, stop loss, Ben admin software, which we talk with admin about that. But the RX benefit is huge. That's where the savings, a lot of the savings this first year comes. And I'll let Jim, I don't want to mess up his thunder on that. But that is a big deal with that ship and having with ForTrust what they're doing with pharmacy and the claim smoothing piece. I'll sum it up as what we've tried to build is a risk sharing program that gives autonomy to the school district, that allows you to keep your independence. As long as you want to stay independent, you've got it. If you want to start risk sharing, you have to give up a little bit, but that's only in the way you administer and you try to get people to really take control of their health. Other than that, we're bringing control back here instead of you giving profit to another insurance company. If you decide in September that I don't want to do this, or let's say after 1 year, let's say you jump in for a year, you see the protections that Jim's going to show you, and you say, you know what, why would we do this? And that's kind of what your numbers indicate to us, is why would we not try? Because your predicted rate increase next year to be fully insured is more than your predicted ag right, for this group. Your aggregate stop loss is less what we're seeing. Now, those numbers could change, but in September, we'll put them hard, right? Why would we try it? And then after a year, what if you say, wait, this isn't any good? What are we on the hook for? Well, your protections are built in. You could go right back into fully insured if you wanted to. There's no commitment to multi-years. You don't have to go for 5 years. It's an annual thing. Okay?
Aaron, well, will there be any, like anticipated penalty? Like say you've gone self-funded and now you need to get back into the full, or you might want to get back into fully funded. You know, sometimes they run up those.
Would the carrier maybe do that to you? Yes, ma'am. They sure could. It would, but what I would say is that competition would jump in, and so Aetna would then be battling Florida Blue and United for your business. Because they want fully insured business, because fully insured is profitable to them. So for me to think that there would be any buck of them trying to take you back, they would welcome you. Where have you been? We missed that. We missed those we missed that. We need to build that house on the river.
Man, you're rough.
I used to be on that side. That fella's looked at me too many times and told me that. Back when we were old buddies at the county too. So, all right, Jim, you're up, buddy.
Thank you, Derek. That was awesome.
Get out. There's a little obstacle course there.
Good evening. I'm Jim Powell of Alliant Insurance. We're the broker for F-SHIP. We've worked with Charlotte Schools in F-SHIP for 9 years. Charlotte Schools has actually been in F-SHIP since 2009. So it's been around a long time, but it's been a pool of one. So we're looking to grow. So we appreciate the chance to talk to you all. Got this one up here. We wanted to give you kind of a representation of who all the players are, and Darren talked about it a bit, but the schools are at the top. You can have a local broker servicing it if you want. That's your decision. You go through procurement, and F-SHIP responds. So F-SHIP is the vehicle that we're talking about today, and we broker with F-SHIP. So we're negotiating the reinsurance contracts, the servicing contracts with Aetna, United Healthcare, Cigna, Florida Blue, depending on what carrier you want. And that's a big part of this is we could anticipate where each school might have their own medical claim payer. And that gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility. If after a year we decide we don't like Aetna's contracts, we can change. So we'll take your claims, we'll do a full repricing, we'll analyze, and we'll come back and give you a recommendation. Hey, it looks like Cigna is the best overall for your group of Florida Blue. So each year, that's something together we can look at. Once you're in the self-funded world, you have that kind of freedom and flexibility to change various parts of it.
So you guys don't do that automatically, we have to ask you to do that?
It's something we're looking at. So we're looking at your discounts and how the program is running. So that's something we'll bring to you and say, you might want to think about that.
Oh,
We
you
try to,
will?
yeah, we try to be proactive
Okay.
in doing that with our clients, and because it's too important. We're talking about a lot of money here.
Yeah.
Optum RX is one of the pharmacy options that we have. There are many, but there is a group purchasing organization that we access that has over $4.5 billion of pharmacy spend, and they pool that out and do an RFP every year to the major pharmacy companies. So the pricing these guys get, when we bring our clients to them, is unbelievable. A big savings of what we're projecting, 20 to 30% of the spend, is reduced because we're buying it so low.
What about, like, independent private ones, like pharmacies? Because I know, like in Clewiston, we have a ton of CVS's and Walgreens and
Yeah,
Walmart
big
pharmacies.
boys, yeah.
And big
Yeah,
boys,
yeah.
but I know that, I mean, am I right, Ms. Nelson, about there's less of chain pharmacies? Well, there may be now.
Well, in Wellside, we have the Walmart, the Winn-Dixie, but for the most part, we pretty much have K&M drugs.
But, like, so are independent, or do they hook up with independent pharmacies?
Yes, some are. That's part of our analysis that we do, is we look at your spend now and where your people are going, and then we map that over to this program, so you'll know, okay, are we going to have fallout or not, which is what I'm sure you're getting to, is we have disruption of people having to change pharmacies. We want to minimize that as much as we can. Big ones are all in all these programs, so that's not an issue. It's more the independents that may or may not be, so we'll have to look at it. That's also something that if you've got an important local pharmacist that is important, it's something we can, petition, with OptumRx and talk to them about possibly including a whole different role.
I just, I just worried about the access to pharmacies, it was just limited, particularly on the Louisville side, so.
Yeah, I understand, that makes sense. But it's pretty similar across the large vendors. So you're with CVS now. Who owns that? I find that kind of cool and interesting and troublesome. But now we're breaking that apart. So we do a lot of business with CVS, but on a freestanding basis. When we analyze those, and if they have a better opportunity, we might actually be recommending them. That'd be interesting. So we look at that objective.
A couple of years ago, when the county switched over to United Healthcare, which uses OptumRx, it wasn't a pharmacy issue that kind of put us in the ground. It was certain medicines that United Healthcare decided not to cover. There weren't any, all the pharmacies still used Optum. So members didn't have to switch pharmacies as much as it was about access to a certain med. And so that's where we'll give you a disruption report. You'll be able to see what your current meds are and what are not covered, those kind of things. So there will be. That happens every 6 months. Every big insurer, they change their prescription drug list, their formulary, right? Aetna gives every 6 months. They try to work different discounts on certain meds. There will be members who will have a disruption in a medicine, not where they go so much as a medicine. There could be a medicine that was a tier 3, that your copay says is this, that'll go to a tier 1, or a tier 1 to a tier 3. Those will happen, I promise you. But that would happen if you, that may even happen without doing anything anyway, with Aetna's fully insured with their PDO.
Sun Life is the reinsurer. Darren talked about specific reinsurance per individual of $175,000. Then the aggregate policy, we'll talk about what the numbers are. But Sun Life is the carrier we've negotiated with, and the numbers that you'll see are their numbers. And then on-site clinic, a lot of the schools have or are getting a lot of on-site clinics. That's something we help them set up and manage and run as a way to really keep the claims down. Charlotte's had one for, 14 years, and we've negotiated with them. It works very well. It can be a significant expenditure when you first do it, but it then offsets health plan expense. So we cost that out for you and show you the return on investment, and maybe something you might be interested in. All right, getting into Joe's underwriting in very small font. That's why I brought paper. It's like a vision test. This is kind of a window into the underwriting of how our financial team projects your rates, frankly. So what we have here is we have an average age of, this is your covered employee population, 39.9. The average American population in health plans is average age 43. So you're actually a little bit below. So you'll be seeing a discount in what Joe's projected for projected claims for next year for you because of that average age. We have very few families covered on the right bottom. The enrollment tier, we have 92% single, and 8% of employees are covering families of kids, spouse, that sort of thing. So not a lot of claim exposure going on in a self-funded pool. A lot of times spouses can create a lot of individual large claims. So actually, ironically, having a lower number of spouses covered reduces your risk. So I want to point that out. It's kind of interesting.
Say that again, Jim?
A lower number of spouses can reduce your $175,000 risk per individual. We see in groups that cover a lot, we'll see half their claims coming from spouses. So that our clients then ask us, well, how do we do something about that? How do we migrate these spouses to their health plans where they work or off the plan?
Now, what happens if we decide to go this route? Because I know that a lot of spouses and family members are not covered right now because it's just too costly.
Yeah.
My wife isn't covered because it's too costly. It's cheaper for me to get a private plan for her than to try to put her on this insurance. So if it makes it where it's much more affordable and I decide to put her on there, and so does 185 other people, then what's
The risk goes way up. It's a mixed blessing.
Yeah, so I mean, that's, what is that going to do to us? Are you guys going to calculate that out and show us, okay, in the worst case scenario, if you had an extra 100,000 employees half of them, their spouses decided to get added on,
Yeah.
can you guys run those numbers, show us both sides? of
Sure,
that?
yeah, we can show you a migration analysis of what would happen. The first year, we're going to be conservative in these projections. So, you know, our funding recommendation will probably be pretty close to maybe what your fully insured rates are this year. So I don't anticipate that happening.
Yeah.
I mean, it could, but we have, when we talked to the insurance committee, we had just acquired a company that actually helps people, spouses and children, buy health insurance through the exchange.
Okay.
So part of our communication, we'll be recommending to you is that you take advantage of that. So for open enrollment, you know, those people that, you know, are buying private coverage may use this option as well. So not coming on this plan, but maybe looking at the exchange because of the subsidies that are out there. It's pretty amazing. So it could be a great opportunity for people that, I'm concerned about people that don't have coverage at all on dependents.
Right.
You know, so maybe we can find them a home at the exchange. So, you know, different answer, but something else to consider.
Yeah, absolutely, no, that's good information.
Yeah.
You know, when you're self-employed and things like that, you gotta do something. You
We're
gotta have
pretty
that.
creative. All right, let's look at the numbers. Joe and his small font, man. So can we zoom now? No, it's just all on one slide, so it's great that it's small. On the top left side, the experience claims, this is your actual health plan experience under the Aetna program for the last 3 years. So these are per employee per month. And this is how he develops your funding rates, which become just like your insurance rates. $679 an employee. Okay, manual claims, that's the discount I mentioned because you're lower overall average age and a group of your size. This is an evening factor that he'll put in to help even out the claims. So it's actually a little bit of a discount on a projection. And the weighting he's given to that is about 30%. 70% is based on your own experience, 30% is based on this manual rate that's developed by your demographics. So you're becoming underwriters here looking at this. So the projected blended claims are $660 in employee month for next year. To that, Darren mentioned what we do with Aetna is we rent their network, and they charge us a claim administration fee per employee per month. So that's that, plus FSHIP's fees and consulting fees are estimated at $60 an employee a month. That's a fixed cost that goes on regardless of what the claims are. Then we have the stop loss premium. That's the $175,000 policy with Sun Life, as well as the aggregate policy. That's the premium that we're paying every month for that policy. Local contract effectuation, if you were to have a local agent that was involved in wellness programs and servicing, that's where that would get added. We've added 0 for now. So our total cost is $812. So we take that times your head count, which is 882. The expected cost next year is $8,602,000, and this is starting January 1. That's a 24 projection. The fully insured renewal, if you receive a 10% renewal, which is a pretty normal increase year over year in the fully insured world, we're estimating that at $9.893 million. So if you don't do this, we're estimating Aetna to come back with a 10% renewal. So it puts you at 9.8, we'll call it almost $10 million. So no insignificant amount of money. So if we compare those two numbers, so the projection of the self-funded plan at 8.6 versus the 9.8, there's a savings projected of $1.2 million. Pretty significant. And a whole host of reasons why. We've stripped out all the carrier profits gone out of this, other than in their ASO fee. All the pharmacy revenue, when I talked about pharmacy, there's revenue going back from CVS to Aetna and back and forth in your current model, that's gone. You know, we're buying this stuff at the lowest net cost, unit cost that's available. So that's why this savings is being realized. Any questions about that? Because that's an underwriting slide. There's a lot there.
Yeah, I was just, some stuff I was just writing down, so, I mean, you're looking at, we've got quite a few different costs, and some of it's not even in there yet. The local, like you said, the local contract. If we have a local agent, which we're gonna need somebody at some point, somebody to do a wellness program. There's gonna be a couple other miscellaneous pieces there that are not funded in this piece right yet.
Yeah.
So what, we're kind of projections are we looking at with those?
About, that could be roughly a $200,000 ad. I got it. So, and I think he's gonna pull it up, but we have a slide with that in there as
Wait,
well.
so the answer to ask that question.
I was hoping, John, but we try to come prepared, and this slide does have a local contract effectuation of a 2.5%
Okay.
fee of your total cost,
That's that.
which is roughly about that $20.84, which takes your savings down. Do you have that with you, Jim?
Yeah, it's about 220 less in savings. So instead of $1,291,000, it's the $1,071,000. So still interesting.
So it's roughly a 10% as
A
projected.
million?
Yeah. That's if you take a 10% rate increase on fully insured.
Yeah.
You know, if it's 5, obviously it'd be less. If it's 15, it'd be more, right? So we were guessing based on the data that you have and what Alliant looks like, saying, yeah, they'll probably take a 10% based off what we see on your current claims experience. But you guys have negotiated down further, and who knows what if it comes back if you start threatening to leave. You know, they may come back and say, oh, we'll give you a 2%. But your 2 and 3, they may make up for it, right? That's the fully insured game, which Mr. Swindle's getting tired of.
So-
They a lot.
Been tired of it.
Yes, sir.
So are there any other pieces that we're missing that could possibly come back as cost besides what we're seeing here?
No. Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
next slide is the aggregate, so you'll be able to see the total. All right, if we have a lot of $175,000 claims and our claims exceed the normal level, then the aggregate policy would kick in.
This is your sleep at night cost.
Yeah, and that exposure is 9.959 million, which is about 8 million of
That's-
aggregate plus your fixed cost, and that's
Tax tag title out the door, that's what your
That's
Good
right.
analogy.
final answer all in?
Final, yes, that's it.
Okay.
Which is interesting because that's about what the fully insured premium is expected to be next year.
Right.
If you do nothing and just renew. So we're saying, you know, you can really fully fund your aggregate, which is amazing, and have the fixed costs, and we think have some nice cash flow, and maybe build up a reserve by making this move.
So you need to go through that forehead on your presentation.
Perfect timing.
No, it's like somebody talking before.
Just like we've rehearsed this.
Yeah, well, you were going to ask, and we didn't. Joe just happened to send, hey, here's with broker,
Yeah.
just in case, because we had conversations of who would help us with contract effectuation.
Yeah.
And so we thought we would include it because it's not if you did need to hire someone, it needed to be accounted for. So we tried to put it in.
Okay, well, that's good, I'm glad, because that's what I like to know is absolute
Yeah.
bottom dollar.
Yeah, that's your decision, it's your money, you decide who the broker is, how much you pay, and we can help with advice.
You know, and the reason why we're talking about coming back in September is because those stop loss premium numbers will be hardened, right? They'll be more solid. We're just too far out. Those are illustrative. We think they'll be pretty close to being the same because we're using experienced, hard numbers that you guys have given us over the last 36 months to predict that. And Sun Life gave us those quotes, but they're going to say you got to get a little bit closer to 1.1 before we can give you a hard number. And so it could change a little bit there. The ASO fees from 60 could go down to 58, something like that. It could be lower, it could be a little bit more, but we think 60 is high. So we think it'll be lower than that. All of Avails and Alliance and all the other fees that are inside the F-SHIP costs are in that with F-SHIP, right? So F-SHIP is, whoever F-SHIP has contracts with to administer this are built into that. So there's no other on top of that from an ASO piece.
So when we come back in September, then we'll up these numbers and they'll be current, firm, and you'll be able to make a decision, and we'll have the fully insured renewal. Right, so we'll actually show you that. It's like, you know, have it from that, well, here it is, here's you know, how everything compares, and it'll be real hard numbers at that point, you can make a decision and move forward.
So if tonight the board chooses to move forward, one of the things that we'll do between now and September is ask you guys to sign, Mr. Swindle, the board chair, to sign a letter of authorization giving F-SHIP access to your data with Aetna, so that when your renewal is published, they'll have it, so that we can bring comparatives, hard number baseline renewal fully insured to this one.
So you'll need that approval tonight at our regular board for that for him to get you that
It
information.
could go
You
with
guys
it,
can have
it
that.
certainly doesn't have to be, but it could go with it, and so that could be part of that motion, and just to authorize the chairman to sign that letter of authorization down the road, that when we could gain access to that data. FSHIP will get access to that data. Right. Okay.
So then we did a 5-year projection. Is this really, it's a long-term decision. That's like, if this runs where we think it will, and we look at the typical self-funded assumptions of claims, we think they typically go up about 7% a year. The administrative fees usually go up 3% a year, stop loss about 20%, that's a conservative number. So that's all our assumptions that are into this projection. And then we just assume the normal 10% a year for the fully insured renewal. We're looking at a pretty good amount of savings here, about $8 million projected over the next 5-year period of doing this. So it's not only a 1 year, but a future decision as well that can save the school a lot of money.
So what about the low ball side of that? If your projections are, if they're not going up 10%, say they're only going up 3%, which probably will never happen in a lifetime, but just throwing a low number out, did you guys run those kind of numbers as well to see what
If your
a minimal savings
claims
may
go
be?
up less than we project, is that what you're?
Yeah,
like-
well, your,
I like
so if
your
your
view.
insurance is only,
The fully insured renewals aren't 10%, say they're 3%.
yeah, they're only at 3%, exactly. So what would we be, yeah, that number's gonna be
It'll go down.
substantially less, so did we run those numbers as well?
No, we can't.
That may be about $2.5 million less. So instead of 8.3, we'd be about 5, 6.
So if you said,
Still good news.
right, so if you said, okay, take the last 5 years of our fully insured renewals and we average them, let's say, and let's put that in as a figure, that would give you an idea.
Right.
From the, but what will skew that is, I just know this game, is as soon as you tell Aetna you're thinking about going self-funded, all of a sudden, fully insured renewals start looking better to them. They don't want to lose you, right?
Right.
So next year's renewal is not going to be the same as if you were standing out there all by yourself, like you were last year.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm asking, if they decide they just
That's why we
drop the
chose.
bottom out of it for whatever reason.
But they're also not going to give you that 3% renewal unless your claims are very good.
Right.
Right.
So it might still be the savings amount.
Correct.
If your claims are going up 3% instead of 7%, then this is probably going to hold. But yeah, you're getting a lower fully insured renewal, but you're also not having to fund as much in your self-funded pool.
Sure.
So.
Okay. I don't mean to put everybody off, I just.
Good questions.
No, they're good. Those are great questions, yes. And so in our experience in dealing with fully insured world, the biggest thing that we're seeing, that's a lot to look 5 years out, but I don't have any clients didn't have any clients when I lived in that agent world, that in the fully insured world, that I could say, look, you can pretty much, if you go this way, count on a flat rate, flat renewal very often.
Right.
And that's what we're saying. They're saying to you guys, if you go this route, we're recommending you fund at the level you're funding now for the next year or two. And that's a 0 rate increase for 2 years potentially in a row while you're building up reserve. So if your claims come in less, which we expect, we're showing you that projection, don't pull that and pull it anywhere else. Use that as reserve, build up that firewood. And so that in year 3, when you go risk sharing, you've got a good reserve sitting on hand, and you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Whereas the years past, you've been planning on, most likely, I would guess, you guys have been planning on rate increases every year. I know all my clients have been, right? And they were tired of that. So at least for the first couple of years, we're not doing it. And I know you guys have a board meeting in like 3 minutes.
Or do y'all have any further questions? So I want to hit a couple of highlights that I have taken in through this conversation and with conversations with other districts as we have met with superintendents, and I want to point a couple things out. So the first thing I would like to point out is it gets really easy to get starry-eyed when he says stuff like you're going to save roughly at these projections $8 million over a 5-year period. That makes my head spin. I believe the numbers. I believe that what they're saying is there. However, what I want to caution you about is through talking to other superintendents that have gone down this path, you need to be careful that as we save the potential of $1.5 million this year, that we don't cut that from what would be the self-insured funding model and put it toward other areas, even salaries at this point in time, because this is a very high-level change. that we're still kind of in uncharted waters where we're still laying the pathway, and it could very well be that those numbers wind up being higher in cost. And so even though it's a cost savings, I'm going to encourage the board and Ms. Cox, and it won't be hard to encourage Ms. Cox to do it, but let's keep that money, in that said silo, so that there will be unknowns. So even though it's a cost savings, we need to look at the long-term cost savings, and after a 5-year or plus period of time, if we have great big surpluses, then we can talk about how we buy that down, reduce, or do something different. So I want to make sure that we're very, very, very careful about that as we go forward. And I don't want anyone to leave from this thinking, we expect to have $1.2 million extra next year. Where are you going to put that? I want to make sure that we're clear on that. The second thing is bear in mind, the reason we're doing this is we have seen upwards of the high teens in premium increases over the last 3 years that I've been involved in this. Some of our colleagues in Hardy and DeSoto have seen into the 20% increases in their premiums. We collectively have done a phenomenal job at getting Aetna down just through the bargaining, through what we can do with them. And then ultimately, I'm ashamed to have to admit this, we actually had to sacrifice the quality of the coverage we're offering our employees by lowering or passing costs along with them. And I'm sick of that. And so that's really, those two things are the driving factor that's driving me to, we've got to do better and do something different. We've got to be in the driver's seat of this, not in the target. And that's where we've been. So that's why I believe this is a good plan. And so we would be more in control. It would be an opportunity for us to drive the insurance. Ultimately, very long term, some cost savings. The real savings will be to keep it from going up at an exponential rate year over year over year. And that's really what we have to get our rein on today.
Another question. How do we explain that to HESPA and HEC to make sure that they are going, oh, look, they've gotten all this extra money, and try to get them to understand what we're trying to do before, for that 5-year period?
Before we met with you, before we brought it to you, we met with the insurance committee. HESPA and HCEA make up a large portion of that insurance committee. They have heard this conversation. We've had these open dialogues with them. They're well aware of that, and they're on board. If you'll notice, they're one of the big backers of this. They're tired of having to sacrifice the quality of insurance, to their people that they answer to as well. So they fully endorse, both of those fully endorse what we're talking about here.
Just want to make sure they're not going to go, in 2 years, oh, well, look, you guys have built up a $2 million surplus,
Yeah.
we need raises, and we need this, and so
Again,
that could very well happen.
And again, 2 years is soon, but in 5 years, if it's there, then they're right to do that, and I think we should support them at that rate.
Absolutely.
But we need that longevity of these numerical values to support that before we do that, is my only point. And I think that's what I've learned in talking with these professionals and other folks around the state that have gone through this.
I wish we could give them all raises and big ones.
I found 2 examples, just so you'll know, of districts that went self-insured and had to go back to fully insured. Both of them did it, and both of them made the same common denominator mistake because they found savings and immediately used that money somewhere else. The following year, the cost went back up because of various reasons, and they didn't have the funds to cover it. And so all of them have said, don't fall into the lure of taking that money and doing something else with it. Leave it in your insurance fund, even in district or in the pool, so that you can cover those high times that will come, but be prepared for that. That's what we have to do. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear on that.
So our immediate saving would be, it will be going up.
That's right. Immediately, let's keep it from rising. In the long term, we're going to hopefully have some bank coin that we have made from doing this, in conjunction with a better medical plan that gives us better prescription prices, that the wellness plan to keep people like me from being overweight and get me back on the treadmill and stuff like that. And so that's the kind of things that we're going to get the savings from. Me and you on the treadmill.
The eventual goal is that you guys build a competitive, as part of your recruitment and retention tool. If it's not today, that tomorrow, 3 years down the road, that your benefits are better than any of their other surrounding districts. That's why we'll come teach in Hendry County. That's the goal of all of our groups, is to get into that capacity.
Reading my
Yeah.
notes here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there are challenges, and there are challenges. And one of the things that I challenge this team with is how can we do a better job at our dependent coverage, either through this or through a separate policy like we can get now? Because that's huge. We're dealing with now with an employee that we're trying to get on in the leadership of this district that's struggling because the dependent coverage is so high. And so whether it be a part of this or we set something else up where we have said companies that offer that so that it's affordable, or it's a mechanism or a conduit or a way to make it happen. So we're working on that, and we hope to be able to bring that as an option as well. I want to be clear that tonight, we're not there tonight. I'm not recommending anything at this point in time. The recommendation is going to be to allow FSHIP to move forward with the continuation of the numerical values of how this program would help Hendry County in a self-insured model. So we're not tonight voting to do this. We're only voting to move forward with further data analysis with FSHIP. That's what the recommendation will be.
The ability for chair or you to sign the authorization letter.
Does that need to be board approved? If it needs to be board approved, we'll add that to it. I don't even know that needs to be board approved. But if it does, I'll ask Molly, and if it does, we'll add it to it. Any further questions? We'll take at least a 5-minute break.
We're hanging out for the meeting.
You're going to come in, and if there are questions during that point in time, if you guys will be available, that'd be great. Okay. Thank you both very much.
We'll take about a 5-minute break. Yes. Everybody get a chance to
Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, May 2nd regular meeting being held in Clewiston. If you would like to join us in the invocation and pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Mr. Superintendent, it appears we have a recognition this evening.
Yes, we do. And before we begin, I want to say, because we're going to do this great recognition of this great program that recognize some great folks, but some of the great folks that are in here, I know as soon as this is over, they're going to make a vacuum sound leaving, and that's okay. I don't mind that, right? But before they leave, we just want to take this opportunity to rub some love on them, because this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we do appreciate you. We know you guys work hard. You are some phenomenal teachers in this room. We've got 10 schools that are full of people who love kids and love what they do. And we want to say thank you. Thank you for what you do every single day. We know you got, I think, 18 days of school left, but who's counting? So we know that you got the countdown going on, and we hope you get some good rest and relaxation and come back in August with your batteries charged and ready to attack another year and do some more great things. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity to tell you thank you while you were here. So having said that, the Hendry County Education Association has a very, very good organization and works hand in glove with this district in many ways. And one of the things that they do is a leadership academy. Their way to move forward and to help the teachers become better leaders, to prepare them for the next steps of the ladder of being in the educational world. And we're very grateful that they do that. Tonight, Ms. Tammy Mitchell is here, and she's going to make some presentations, but understand she's going to get some help because yes, right. Exactly.
My name is Eileen Pearson, and I'm the Vice President of HCA. And our Leadership Academy is in our third year. I was one of the very first ones. Tammy was in the second class, and we now have a third class. We are on our side of the district, and Labella is doing their recognition on another night. We want to thank HCA and Hendry County Schools for allowing us these rising leaders to bring back to the skills they have learned in these 6 months. We do a session once a month for the last 6 months since October. We are grateful and thankful for them. What we do is we train them, and they go back to their schools and train other teachers. We did a book club called Stop Right Now, and what it did is there was 39 things that you could go through and stop and not do it again. It was very informational for us. So, then we did Ron Clark's 55 Essential Things, Thinking Maps, and we ended our last class with social emotional learning and social emotional learning with the teacher burnout. It was very informative with the stats, but I would like to recognize the following leaders. I have Ashley Rodriguez from Central Elementary School. They're also being presented with a certificate and some money. Allison Shelton, also from Central Elementary School. Stephanie Arundel from Eastside Elementary. I just have to brag on this one right here because he was my intern during COVID. Jose Velasquez Olvera. Nina Bautista. Sorry if I butchered it. from Eastside Elementary. Rima Patel, also from Eastside Elementary. Melissa Gonzalez from Eastside Elementary. Dana Prescott Howard from Eastside. We have one for Dawn Branch, but she's not here this evening. Yvette Porth from Clueston Middle School. We would also like to present the school board members with their little trinket that they got to.
Is there one for the attorney?
Great job.
What? I've not tried them, but they're okay? Well, that's okay. Enjoy your evening. Mr. Superintendent, do we have any presentations this evening?
We do have a couple of presentations this evening. The first one is going to be presented by Ms. Devonia Allen. She's administrator, assistant director, I guess now, of school improvement, and she's got a wide array of things she's going to talk to you about and fill you in on the things that she has done and the improvements that's been made to the school system this year. Ms. Allen.
Thank you, Superintendent Swindle, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and Board. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight. This is not me on the screen, but this is clearly what I do. So I always say that school improvement is a process, and what gets monitored gets done. And I'm happy to report tonight that we have made tremendous strides over the past year and a half since I've been here. Academically, I'm on the culture side, and also in terms of leadership. So thank you. So I'm going to talk about a few of the bullet points here, but this is pretty much the meat of our work here in Hendry. I do want to start with the school improvement plans because, as you know, school improvement plans are the driving force in terms of academics, instruction, also culture and climate, as well as transformational leadership. This summer, we got a jump start. We brought all the principals in. We really looked at the way that we do school improvement plans. Previously, the focus was on students and student data, student outcomes versus teacher impact. And so when you look at the school improvement plan, it's about how we're going to impact instructional practice. And so for that, that was a task for our principals this year to look at how are we going to fill the gaps and better prepare our teachers so that we can have better student outcomes. So with that, again, all of our principals rise to the occasion. They turned in their school improvement plans. I was able to provide feedback, and then we utilize those to help us keep our fingers on the pulse throughout this school year on what was happening in schools. So the next big thing that I do want to talk about tonight are our standards institutes. As you know, we have our K-12 instruction reviews where myself and both directors conduct classroom walkthroughs across our 10 schools. And with that, and also our individual classroom walkthroughs, we were able to see that although last year we rolled out a planning protocol and common language, that our teachers also needed support with the standards, specifically grade level standards. So in classrooms, we probably saw like the implementation of standards below the grade level or above the grade level, and it was actually refreshing to hear teachers say, you know what, I've been in the 9th and 10th grade lane. I need to stay in the 9th grade lane for students. So getting that feedback from teachers, but also helping them ensure that they can see the full vertical alignment, especially in ELA, on what is taught for their grade and what's taught before their grades and after their grades. So the Standards Institute, we specifically focus on ELA and math. So again, it paid huge dividends, so much so to as we continue our instructional reviews and classroom walkthroughs, we saw more teacher clarity on what they were actually teaching, and then from the student perspective, understanding what is being taught. So again, that was amazing. For planning, again, last year we rolled out the planning protocol and also the common language. And so I personally have been able to sit with teams of teachers for 5 to 6 weeks at a time, just to continue to work through that planning process. Last year our focus was on before planning, so knowing what, again, standards, content, background knowledge, what is it that you want to build students' knowledge around. This year was the during planning process. Like, how are we going to get kids engaged in the process? What strategies are we going to use as vehicles to teach them the standards that they need to know? The biggest thing that we preached this year was building content knowledge. So going through those weeks of planning, again, that was an amazing process to see the teachers develop over the weeks and rise to the occasion. We have some amazing teachers and they want to be supported. So that was literally a blessing for me to be a part of that process. The last one I want to talk about on this specific slide is the curriculum implementation with fidelity. As you know, we've adopted several curriculums in our district in the past few years. And again, going through the instructional reviews, we've seen true implementation with fidelity with our curriculum. So much so to we've had vendors come in this year. We adopted Big Ideas, was our math curriculum 612. And when I tell you we got raving reviews. They praised us on every level for curriculum implementation. We've also had Achieve 3000, we've had Amplify, we've had Benchmark. I mean, again, our teachers are doing an amazing job. So we're really excited about the feedback that we've gotten from the vendors. It always helps to have an outside eye because we're in the work daily. So I really applaud our teachers for all the work that they have done this year. Those are just some pictures from elementary to high school of some of the different classrooms and some of the amazing things that we've seen teachers implement to help guide students as they work through the process through ELA, math, social studies, and science. So the next focus for me tonight is the K-12 coaches support. Last year, we decided to combine and that it would be more appropriate and beneficial to our coaches if we combine them all together. For me, and I always tease coaches, coaching is coaching. We coach all things. And I say that in general because, again, coaching is coaching. And we have to be able to build relationships with teachers. The only thing that changed is the content. So we started out this year with It's All About Alignment. And one of the things we did is had coaches look at the strategic plan. We had them look at their school improvement plan and look at the alignment. How does your school improvement plan align with the strategic plan? Because they needed to see the full district picture. Then from the school improvement plan, we dug down even deeper. We had them bring in a tiered plan of support, like here's all of your teachers for the year. How are you going to tier your teachers? And what are you going to support them on? So we looked at a few things to tier them. We had them develop coaches' calendars, coaches' plans, and again, we had them look at all those things across the board. We wanted to make sure there was true alignment and that we're maximizing our time. And then we did a deep dive into the benchmark curriculum, which is the elementary curriculum. However, again, as a middle or high school coach, I think we should be able to look at any curriculum and be able to dive deep into it so that you can see the necessary resources. I think our big focus, or our focus for that particular activity mainly, was around building content knowledge. And we wanted to show that you can do that through every curriculum. You just have to be aware and build your knowledge around the specific curriculums. Again, we had our Standards Institutes. Our calibration walks were powerful this year. We walked classrooms with coaches. The first one I modeled, coaches followed me as I walked classrooms. We shared feedback, and then I provided feedback to the teachers. They watched me deliver the feedback, and then we continued the cycle from there. And so the powerful thing about the calibration walks is, again, we want our coaches to see the exact same thing that we see. They live in their buildings, we don't, but we want to make sure we're seeing the same things so that our feedback is aligned. And then, of course, our coaching cycles, coaches' conversations, which we started last year, just giving them the opportunity to role play around conversations that they may experience. And then the school culture and climate go-to was huge this year. One of the things that the schools wanted to do was obtain feedback from stakeholders, specifically students. And in this case, we formed student focus groups. And I think it's a powerful thing when schools want to hear from all stakeholders, the good, bad, and the ugly. And that's exactly what these schools did. Based on the feedback that we received, this is only 2 questions, but what the school said is, Ms. Allen, we need you to come in as a neutral party, and we need you to ask kids questions around instruction and school safety. Those were the major components of the survey. And based on those surveys, schools they already started putting things in motion. And so the first one I do want to highlight about teachers. Mr. Swindle was able to join me on the second round of focus groups, and we talked to kids about, like, would you consider becoming a teacher? And most kids, when we looked at their feedback and what they said, because it's anonymous at first, and then we started having conversations, they didn't want to deal with their peers. So the more and more we talked about, like, what can you do to, become a teacher? We think we probably had a little traction, because at the decision day yesterday, at least we had 7 teachers.
That's right.
We had 7 teachers coming back preferably. So again, it was good to get that feedback from kids to see what schools needed to do better or where they are excelling right now. And then I think I have about 1 more minute, Ms. Cox. Thank you. All right, so the last thing is, as you know, we started CHS Champions last year on the mentoring program. We did another pilot this year, but added a few juniors. And as of right now, hopefully that House bill passes. If it passes, we have 3 kids that 2 still needs to finish the math test and get the concordance score, and 1 needs the reading. And so if we can make that happen, everybody, fingers crossed, we'll be at 100%. And then we'll figure out, again, what systems and processes we need to put in place next year to continue this, but to build it systematically, like school-wide. And then the last thing I want to say for next steps, school improvement, we always have next steps. The bottom pieces are things that we highlighted last year and things that we'll continue to work on, how we communicate top down, and continuing to include other stakeholders in the decision-making process, continuing to develop our leaders from principals to assistant principals. And one of the major things for schools is monitoring of instruction and the specific feedback. And so we started the implementation of the curriculum, we started providing them with the support, and now from the leadership perspective, monitoring that instruction that is being implemented and providing specific feedback to shift teacher change, of course. And that's my time. All right.
Madam Chair, how has all this work that this body of work, how has that translated to measurable student gains and achievement like you would see in monitoring, like best 1, best 2?
So specifically, as of right now, we would not know that. We are looking at the data at each school level for PM1 to PM2. I can tell you there has been a lot of growth. With the Chief 3000, we just got our data back and our data looks amazing. With big ideas, we just looked at our algebra and geometry data and we're seeing huge gains again across the board. And then from the elementary level, the same. And so I think with the Standards Institute, teachers understanding and have more clarity about what they should be teaching, I think that's helped a lot. We literally had to hit the reset button, like, well, okay, we started planning, but we need to go back to make sure they understand what they're planning and then continuing to move forward. But our teachers have been troopers in that process. But we'll see in the end, you know, always with the data, but I will say I am happy to see the growth is definitely there. It is definitely there.
Fantastic. So I love what you said about the good, the bad, and the ugly feedback.
Yes.
And so, you know, we listen to all different, you know, we hear all kind of different perspectives. One of the ones I keep hearing is people are kind of have been down with coaches because we have a need for certified teachers in the classrooms. And so, you know, and one of the arguments has always been, like, well, what's it doing to move academic achievement? And so is there like a structure of accountability for the coaches to, am I getting too crazy here?
No.
I saw you laugh and I was like, is it a nervous?
Well, no. So let me say I can't do the work that I do without coaches. Let me say that first. Again, they live there, I don't. My goal is to build their capacity so that they can do the work that I do. And when they're unavailable because they're at a coaches institute, et cetera, they say, Miss Allen, remember you told us we should be able to jump in and help each other? Now we need you to jump in. That's how seamless our relationship is. But again, I cannot do the work that I do. When I tell you they shadow everything that I do, Standards Institute, feedback, et cetera, and now I'm in a process where I can sit back and smile because they're facilitating the process, and ultimately that is the goal. As far as accountability, all you have to do is talk to a coach and they will tell you that they get feedback on the regular.
Well, this is encouraging because, you know, I think that when, you know, we took the federal funds for these positions,
Yes.
and then there was a tremendous amount of like structure and guidance on, it was kind of like, hey, get in there and coach, and you're like, I don't even have the rules.
Yes, that's one of the things that we took by the horn, and we really, again, we came together and said, you know, we want all of our coaches together. Again, to me, the coaching is coaching, but we wanted to go back to the basics. So what is coaching? What does a coaching cycle look like? You know, what type of conversations do you need to have? And I think it's no different than teachers. The support needed to be there, the ongoing professional learning, and the feedback, because the feedback is what shifts skills.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Question about, you mentioned the concordance score, the mentorship program. And I know that getting those kids like graduating and reading on 12th and doing math on a 12th grade level, that starts way before they hit high school. What an approximate percentage of our kids in that mentorship program that are graduating because of a concordance score?
When you say because of it, you mean
Oh, they
with
needed
the change?
Yeah, they needed any concordance score
Oh,
other
that they-
than the standard.
So there was 10 that needed a concordance score, like one or the other.
Okay.
We did not have any kids that needed both, which is how they qualified for the mentoring program.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
How many kids did you have in it?
When we started, it was 18, so 2 graduated early, and then we ended up with 15. 1 transferred out to New York, so that left us with 14. And then we had a few that passed the actual assessment, the state assessment. And then, like I said, as schools continue to give the assessments, students pass the concordance score number. And so now, like I said, we only have 3 kids, 2 that still need a math concordance score, and 1 that needs a reading concordance score. But all kids have made up all of their missing credits, and they all have above a 2.0 GPA.
Okay, because GPAs are important,
Of course.
and a diploma is important.
Absolutely.
But those kids have the skills, the transferable skills to make it out there in the real, you know, world outside of K-12, whether it, be a skill, because I'm here, some of the feedback I hear is even kids going into skilled trades now have challenges, which is the basic academic skills to fully even to participate in that. And so, you want these kids, a diploma means very little if it doesn't attach to like a standard of expectation. As an employer, that you can hire this person and you know that they're reading, writing, and spelling, and doing basic math. And so,
And I think absolutely we are aware of that, which is why that was an addition that we added to the program this year. We were able to set up an opportunity with Mr. Lukenhouse for kids to learn more about the welding program, the mechanical program. We also had speakers come over to like the high school. So we are aware that, there's more than just a diploma. For me, it's about options. So I want you to have both.
I want a kid to be able to be a welder or
Absolutely.
or whatever skill trade, but also have the academic skills to run his businesses. You know what I'm saying? So, but this sounds great and it's very encouraging. And just want to get down to the nuts and bolts. I know you know. So,
All right. Thank you.
Super encouraging. Thank you. I enjoyed our talk.
All right. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
would like to point a couple things out, and you can be dismantling. I believe, and I'm trying to remember exactly, I think it may have been the very first school board meeting when I was superintendent, sitting with the five of you at the time. Y'all gave me the latitude to be able to hire on Mr. Sanchez and Ms. Duncan, directors of secondary and elementary respectively. Roughly a year or so later, we were able to be blessed with Ms. Allen. The three of those folks together have done some unbelievable change turnarounds to our school district. Now, what I want to point out, did you see the things that Ms. Allen was pointing out that they were able to fix, that they were able to bridge gaps? If you read between the lines, we had some major gaps in our district there. And so the gains, this being the kind of the fast data baseline year, it's going to be wonky. I wish it hadn't been so we could have shown the growth, but we're going to be where we are. I implore you to understand that last year we had all A, B, and C schools for the first time since the grading metrics that started in Florida. That was a direct reason why right off the bat. And so as we see the growth that we're seeing now on the, be it iReady or other tests that the students are using to gauge, the teachers and schools are using, it's phenomenal growth that we're having. And it's nothing short of the work that that team of those three are doing in those schools every day in the coaching, training, bringing the higher standard of rigor to the teachers, the more training the teachers are getting. And you would have thought that the teachers would have pushed back and said, oh no, we can't do that. We don't have time for that. Well, it's 180 degrees from that. They reached back out and said, can you come back and help me with that, learn more? Can you come back into my classroom now and model that with me again? I like that. I want to learn more. And so our teachers are eager to learn and get better. And that's really what's driving the better school performance that we're seeing. So I can't say thank you enough to the team of the three that really work every single day directly with those schools and teachers to make it better. The work they're doing is unbelievable, and we will see benefits of it as years goes on, and we get more fast data in the years to come.
well, I mean, it makes sense because I made the little analogy, but I kind of felt like before we were putting him in a coaching position, and then it would be like telling me to coach tennis.
Well, again, there were gaps.
Please come model that for me
Yeah,
and explain how you do this.
The concept of a coach was there, right? But there were gaps in how it was, handled with a very, detailed, oriented way, and it's there now. And they're doing it. They're doing it with a phenomenal model and with phenomenal growth. We're not perfect. We're not 100% there. Everybody's still getting better and learning and bringing in new techniques and still learning. But that's okay. That's what we do. So again, I just can't say thank you enough to the three, that team of three there that's really making a huge impactful difference. Okay.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
well, yeah, no, hey, thank them, right? Moving right along, yes. So our next presentation is going to be from our ESC and Student Services Department, and here to head that off for us to kind of go over some high-level changes that we're working on there. Director Lynette White and Administrator Mr. LeDuc, for those of you who have not had a chance to meet him.
Assistant director now.
Assistant Director, I'm sorry.
Changed his
I've got
title.
used to that.
He is one of my assistant directors
Steve Ledoux oversees some of these ESC classrooms, and so I asked him to be here with me today. We're talking about some of the changes that we're looking at for next school year that's going to affect the elementary school ESC classrooms. And so we currently have 6 elementary schools. You know them well. The ESC classroom, and what does that look like in our district? That's kind of what I'm going to talk to you first. And in your packet, it starts with these slides. And as we go through, if I have additional support materials, it'll be included in behind those dividers as we go through.
I love this, by the way.
Oh,
Thank you.
you're
The
welcome.
labels and everything.
Awesome, thank you. I'm a little bit OCD myself, so. The ESC classroom, what does it look like? What does it mean? So in our district and most districts, when we're talking about an exceptional student education classroom, that is a classroom that is housed with an ESC teacher, an exceptional student education teacher. Those classrooms typically are made up with para-educators that help support the instructional needs of that classroom, as well as behavioral support and support for social emotional learning. Those individuals in that classroom have an individual education plan that outlines what services, what goals and objectives that the teacher should be working towards, in addition to working on grade level standards or access point standards in that particular classroom setting. Students are scheduled under that ESC teacher, and so it is their caseload. It is an ESC teacher's caseload, and sometimes that looks like a homeroom for our ESC students, and they push out and go into gen ed classrooms throughout the day and come back if they need some extra support. It is based on their individual education plan, how much time they spend in that environment versus in the general education setting, depending on each student and their specific needs. We do utilize a core curriculum in that classroom, in those classrooms for students who are on access points, which access points is alternative standards. So we were talking about the vertical curriculum. Ms. Stavonia was speaking to that earlier. And our students that are on access points then would be working on an approximation to that grade level standard. We use the Encore curriculum, and I've given you some information in your packet about that, and we'll look through that in just a moment, but it does target those same core areas: English, language arts, math, social studies, and science. Our ESC students in those classrooms, are made up of varying exceptionalities. So we may have a student who is in that classroom who might have some behavioral concerns, but cognitively is functioning quite high or typical. We may have students in there with more severe cognitive disabilities, so there are varying exceptionalities in those classrooms. Our job as a school district is to look at what is the least restrictive environment for those students to be successful with their education, and so students with disabilities should receive education alongside their typical peers. That's what we should look at first. And how can we do that to the maximum extent possible and appropriate for those students? The students with disabilities should not be removed from the general education classroom unless they cannot learn without additional supports or a different environment or setting. And so those things are determined through their individual education plan, and we look at what supplementary aids or supports they need to be successful in the gen ed curriculum or the gen ed classroom. The LRE is determined on a case-by-case, so again, it is specific to each student in their individual education plan, and that IEP team is there to help make those determinations based on data and how they're performing and what supports they may need. The next slide looks at what does that continuum of services look like. So the least restrictive, of course, is the gen ed classroom, and we do have students with disabilities who are in the gen ed classroom all day long. They do very well with those supports and services, accommodations that they may need or modifications if needed. We have our ESC classrooms, special education classrooms, and then we currently do not have a special school that would be like an alternative placement where only individuals with IEPs are. We do not have that in our district. But if a student needed such, then we would have to look at how would we address that need for that student. Homebound services, we do have students who receive homebound services due to medical reasons or behavioral concerns or mental health concerns that maybe being in an environment with other students at this time is not what's best and least restrictive for those students. So we do have those homebound students and also hospital homebound. The most restrictive though, the hospital or residential facility, we currently do not have any students that are placed in that setting at this time. We would have to look at neighboring communities to make that happen if a student needed those particular services. Currently in our ESC classroom, our model is that we have a ESC classroom at each elementary school. They are considered, or we call them self-contained, but there's very few, if any, that are just staying in that classroom all day. Most of our kids are out either for enrichment or lunch, or they might go in for a morning meeting or circle time. Then we have many kids who are in there for their academic instruction and again push in more for social skills and those kind of things. So that term, we don't necessarily love that term, but that is still something we are referring to those classrooms as self-contained. The number of students can vary across each school, but are between about 8 to 15 in those classrooms. That is continuing to grow because we are getting more and more students just in general moving in, including students with disabilities and students with more significant needs. And so those numbers are rising. Our adult to student ratios, we like to keep 1 to 3, 1 to 2. That doesn't always happen, and we want to try to continue to work on keeping that. The kids that are needing that support in that environment need more adult support for the instruction as well as behavioral support or social emotional support. All of that again is determined through the needs of the student and their IEP. In those classrooms, it's grades kindergarten through 5th grade in one classroom setting. And so we have, our smaller children with our larger children, and when you're talking about some of those behavioral things, sometimes that's challenging in that environment, as well as some of the instructional challenges, and I'm going to speak to those as we move forward. Currently, the curriculum that's being used at an elementary level for our gen ed classrooms is benchmark education, and again, targeting those content areas of English, math, science, and social studies. Students who are in these ESE classrooms who might be on access points, and that is not every student. We might have 2 or 3, we might have 5 or 6. It just depends on if they qualify and need that level of modification. Those students are to receive the Encore curriculum, and so it again targets English, math, science, and social studies, but it has a lot of visual supports, different leveling for students, so it helps them learn at their levels.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Which are the kids or the students on Encore?
Mm-hmm.
Are they standardized tested?
Yes, but they would take the FSAAs right now, not the FAST. They would be testing on the FSAA.
And then the ones on benchmark certainly are a part of the...
Yes, on
okay.
FAST, that's correct. So we want to think of our students with disabilities as students first. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. They're trying to master those grade level standards just like all other students. And so it has really been my drive to help these teachers and these classrooms gain the skills that they need to be able to deliver high quality instruction, just like Ms. Allen spoke about. Using this curriculum, it does have specific lesson plans that are laid out for the teachers, materials to help support those lesson plans. Back in my time, years ago teaching, we would be creating all these materials from scratch. We didn't have computers, we didn't have picture programs and all this stuff. So a lot of the things that our students need are these levels of supports that with the readers, there's visuals to help them understand the words that are, being said. And we had to make this stuff ourselves. So our teachers have this curriculum, they have access to these materials, there's tons of other visual supports, worksheets, things that are made at different levels for them to implement instruction in the classroom. In the Teach Town Encore curriculum, they are asking that they focus 90 minutes, whether it's whole group, center rotation, or individual, to target ELA and math, 90 minutes, and then 60 minutes of science or social studies. They alternate each day. So in order for that to happen for those students on access points, they have to do this in a center type rotation. So we're talking about, 8 to 12 students, 3 to 4 adults, rotating and making sure we're implementing these lesson plans and the instructions. So our pairs are trained as well as our teachers to be able to implement the lesson plans. And then each of these kids, again, have different levels of support needs. So if there are behavioral concerns, they might have to interrupt the group at that time to go deal with the behavior and then come back and try to finish the group. So we do these in like 15-minute intervals, the rotations for each block of time. This is an engagement schedule, and there are some copies in your packet, and there's also an explanation of what engagement schedules are, and I think it's after tab 3. An engagement schedule is what we sit down with our teachers and we work through what is your day going to look like and who is supporting who at what time. The engagement schedule, I think, starts after those ELA, math, science, and social study rotations, but you will see we're planning what is the teacher doing and what kids are they supporting at that time and what instructional task is happening. Para 1, what are they doing? Who are they getting off the bus? How are they transitioning from point A to point B? What are they doing with each of those kids and who are they supporting? And we do that for each para role in the classroom. So it's really a master schedule for that classroom and who does what with who at what each time. It takes me about 40 hours to create the schedule for one classroom for a teacher. And it's because there are so many moving pieces in this day for these individuals. So we have K to 5, we have kids pushing out. If they need to go to the 5th grade enrichment, it happens at this time. Kindergarten enrichment happens at this time. 3rd grade enrichment happens at this time. ELA for this kid happens at this time. So I have to look at all of that, my team and I, we look at that with the teacher, and we have to sit down and figure this puzzle out, right? Yes, sir.
I'm trying to make sure I got this right. So in this one classroom, you have one teacher?
And 2, 3, but usually generally about 3 pairs depending on, and then some students might have continuous support because they have more significant needs.
You have from kindergarten into 5th grade?
Correct, yes, sir.
And each one of those students has to have a IEP, right?
Yes, sir.
And each teacher has to have a lesson plan for each student?
Yes, sir. So that IEP are the goals and objectives they have to work on for that student to meet whatever areas of deficits that they may have. They also are responsible for implementing the instruction in ELA, math, science, and social studies. And all those students are going to be at different places in that continuum of that, yes, sir. And from kindergarten to 5th grade.
So it's possible to have all in one group, or you have different groups?
We have to have a lot of different groups moving throughout the day, yes.
They need some extra players, huh?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So consider that. Think about that when I present that to you all next year. Yes. So, no, they do. And the pairs, and truthfully, we do deal with very significant behavioral, students who may have some very significant behavioral needs as well. So these are individuals who are physically sometimes harmed by, intervening with some of our kids and trying to help them learn. And so it is a very tough job. Yes. But just real quick, I want to point out, like the yellow blocks are breaks. Every para has to have a 15-minute break, AM, PM. Teacher 2, they have to have a lunch, 30 minutes. There's so many restrictions to try to figure out how are we instructing and providing instruction for these kids, right? It's a lot. So that's all I'm going to say with that one. We're going to move forward. It's a lot. Yes.
Ms. White, so one of the things that I've seen in other districts are units.
Yes.
Like an EBD
Yes.
unit or an ASD unit. Are we using any of that?
Not yet. So this is a good question, and it's not that we won't. It depends on numbers. Quite frankly, our numbers of autism is increasing quite a bit, but in other districts, there are different units, like an emotional behavior unit or an autism unit, and in bigger districts that happens. And it's not to say it won't happen here right now, it's not, but we are seeing more and more individuals with autism in our district, and so, and that's nationally, it's not just here. Again, the increase has just recently gone 1 in 32 diagnosed with autism. where last year and 3 years prior it was 1 in 44. So
When I got into the game, it was
1 in 155.
150
I
something.
mean, they're 45, just one.
One out of 1 in 32, there's an individual
Identified.
identified.
And we told y'all that we're a growing district. We still take kids in every day.
Yeah, I've had 4 signed this week.
An exponentially high number of the ones that are coming in are the ones that need the special services that Ms. White provides,
Yeah.
more so than we've ever seen before. So
And-
that's, you'll see it coming up in the action items that we're having to make adjustments for that.
And there's most certainly a continuum of autism spectrum disorder. I don't want to, allude to the fact that they're all going to end up in an ESE classroom, because that is not true at all. But just, there are a lot of behavioral challenges that come with that particular eligibility, and so it is, and it is a spectrum, and we do have both ends, all ends of that spectrum.
And like, particularly the EBD, I struggle
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
sometimes with those kids in that least restrictive environment.
Right.
Because those kids and teachers have a right to a learning environment free of harm and disruption.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't know if we were like tracking towards those numbers to be able to like stand up these units.
Yeah. I would say that those numbers are smaller, much smaller, and so to have a classroom right now, we would not have enough. Or they're being served in the gen ed with, supports. But they do access that as a place if their behaviors are at a point that they need. It's not something we won't look at, I'll say that.
Yeah, but I just like, and my knowledge comes from the Belglade area.
Yeah.
Which is, similar to, and the schools are similar in size to ours. And I don't know if it was Gove or Belglade Elementary, but they definitely had those units there.
And sometimes what I've seen in smaller districts, it might be at one school, we don't have them at another, just because we just don't have enough to have at every school. But we certainly want to continue to look at the needs and go that direction. Okay, I'm gonna
have one more question, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do we have the support staff to do what we're, like, ideally what we wanted to do to meet the kids' minutes and support on their IEPs?
Yes, we do, and we continually look at that. We evaluate that constantly. And if it's on the IEP, we're going to implement it, right? We're going to figure out how to do that. And that's conversation. I've had that conversation today for a student. So, and I've never been told no.
Do we struggle with it?
Yes.
Is
Well,
it-
and
is it-
getting people to stay.
Is it the hardest area to recruit and retain? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's why Reverend Brown and me, we've been kicking around just what Reverend Brown said to
Yeah.
accommodate that.
It is, that is the challenge, is keeping people. We do have high turnover in people.
We are actually planning a lot of things for the next school year to increase retention through a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in terms of coaching cycles, and really building expertise and a deeper level of understanding of not only how to align with standards, but also how to meet the needs of children in those groups. So that is a huge area of focus for our department to help ease some of that stress and tension that does just naturally occur as a result of school.
We have a slide about it. I'm going to move forward on that. No. Okay, so again, in alignment with what Ms. Allen was talking about, our goal and our strategic plan for academic achievement, it is a district-wide initiative, but a lot of times ESE operates in silos, and we don't want that to happen. Like, our goal is to align with what's happening in the district, and instead of being two circles, they become one, right? And we're looking at instructional initiatives that are going to benefit all students. And we are following and looking at those same priority strategies that have been outlined for the district. From 2018 to current, these are things we're putting in place and trying to do to increase that instructional movement for those ESE teachers and in those ESE classrooms. So the Encore curriculum, we've had training in person multiple times. I personally have worked for this company in the past, so I'm very familiar with the curriculum. I was able to do more coaching and and really do some instructional pieces with them as well. We've had coaching webinars from their company. We've had people come down and do walkthroughs and do coaching and give feedback to teachers this year. We've had coaching on those PD days, those data days on the best standards, standards-based planning, data collection, and progress monitoring. The assistant director does that along with our BCBAs, and we're really working on making sure they're able to take data, understanding how to take data, and then how to use that data to make decisions about moving forward with students' academic growth. We're doing training on direct instruction and precision teaching, which is a behavioral method of instruction and data measurement. We have seen in our self-contained, our ESC classrooms, we have seen students that have made 500% gains in 4 months with reading because of this specific way we're providing the instruction.
Gordon Gillingham, it aligns with that, doesn't it?
Well, it aligns with that, and it also our UFly that we're doing, and all of those things that we're doing. Again, across the district, we're doing those things in our ESC classrooms as well, and we're trying to continue to push forward with that. So we're seeing great gains with that. Training on evidence-based behavioral practices, training on best practices for ESC classroom and coaching and feedback using mentoring. And so in your packet as well, there are some of our coaching forums. We have looked at the effective instruction for students with significant cognitive disabilities. It's aligned to the Marzano framework. And in these, and you also have a copy of this in your packet, but for our teachers, when you go in as a principal and you're observing in these ESC classrooms, some of the things that you're used to seeing in a gen ed classroom, you may not be sure are they really doing this effectively? Are they at this level as this teacher? Well, because we might be using a visual schedule for a student, or a written schedule, or it's just going to look a little bit different sometimes in those classrooms. And so we try to pull from this framework. It does align to that Marzano, but we built those into coaching forms so we can go in and teach and coach our teachers. We are asking them to identify areas they want more training based on these coaching forms, and then providing feedback to them. And so those walkthroughs were happening. We had some turnover. I got moved up. This person came in. We're trying to get that started again. So we're definitely been talking about those forms again, and they're going to start those walkthroughs again next school year. So you have some information on that. So our current challenges and our area of focus it's really meeting the instructional needs. It's a huge puzzle every day, K to 5, trying to figure out how to make that work to get kids pushed out for gen ed's content when they need that. Or our teacher is having to teach the gen ed content in the classroom as well as teach towards those access points for those students. There are some intense behavioral intervention supports and plans happening all day, every day, data collection on that. Student support when they're out in that gen ed setting and classroom. It can be challenging when you're trying to manage getting all those people K to 5 out and about. Our district is continuing to grow, so not just the class size, but we needed another classroom. Like we need more services in place, and so classrooms in place. And then of course we want to keep teachers, and for me, trying to learn all the standards and focus on K to 5, and then also how to differentiate all of that, the vertical curriculum, and then also having to learn all the access point standards and the IEPs, and there's so many layers. I know personally, I would not be able to do that great every day, right? It's going to take a lot, and eventually I'm going to get very burned out. And so that is a huge concern for us in the district, as well as that teachers feel like they're mastering these skills, they're able to do quality instruction for students, and students are achieving. And then we can keep them because they're not quite stressed out, we hope. But so for next year, what we're looking at doing is adding a classroom on both sides of the district. One of them will be added at Country Oaks Elementary, and one will be added at Central Elementary. This is the makeup and breakdown of those classrooms. So, and I will tell you right now, I did this PowerPoint last week, and I've already, those numbers that are in parentheses are the numbers of students. That's already gone up. So we're going to continue to have to look at this as we continue. But like at Westside, we're now looking at 14 students. We had another one for up the Grove Elementary, Country Oaks, we're getting them all the time. So these numbers are gonna change and grow, and as that happens, we have to continue to grow and change and figure out what our next steps will be. So most of the schools have, again, about 8 to 15 now, is probably gonna be a more accurate number. The ratio, we're trying to keep the same student to teacher ratio. The grades will be divided though, and this is what's new and different. So we would like this grade level grouping K to 2 and grades 3 to 5 to have 2 separate classrooms because the challenges again are extreme. So what this means is a school that used to have a K to 5 unit might now just have a K to 2 unit. So kindergarten, first and second grade. A school that maybe had K to 5 now might have just 3 to 5. What that means is that there are families that will have to move to a different school for the next school year. I have personally met with each of those families and had conversations with each of them about that move so that they understand why we're doing that and what our intention is. Our growth, we think eventually we'll have K to 2 and 3 to 5 at all schools, right? But I can't put those there till we have the students to support that. So it's just, we're in a growth period and we're making some changes. I believe, and my department believes as well as the district, that, you know, we're gonna see teachers feeling better about their job, feeling more efficacy because they're going to feel like they're mastering those skills and that they can deliver that instruction to students, and we're going to see growth from the students, and that again is our goal. Just to answer any questions about this, it's a location change, so it doesn't change their IEP, it doesn't affect the child's IEP directly unless there's something in that environment that changes once they're there. That maybe like if they stop making progress, then that would be an IEP discussion. We would want to talk about that. What we're trying to do is have those preventive meetings for transition so we don't have that problem and put any additional supports that are needed, behavior supports or instructional supports or training or whatever it might be. So that location change is not necessarily an IEP team decision. However, if there are concerns or things we need to address, we will address those through an IEP. Again, we want to always look at the continuum and the LRE. And these questions, they're in your packet as well, but it's just some things we want to make sure, like, when we're looking at, is it a change of placement versus location? These are questions that we would ask. And our intended outcomes is that we want to increase student achievement. We want to look at that academic growth. We want to see, decrease in behavior, increase in academic and skills, social emotional development to improve our teacher practices and enhance instruction. That efficacy that our teachers feel like they have mastered the skill and they're actually, delivering quality instruction each day. Increase collaboration with our gen ed teachers. Planning and trying to do PLCs for K to 5. The teachers don't get to do that very often. It's very difficult. Have age-appropriate peers for social development. Safer environments because that age group, and when we're dealing with kids who have behavioral issues, we have big kids with very young kids, so that's a challenge. And as a district, we continue to grow. We want to see those classrooms at every school if that's, a K2 and a 3-5, so kids don't have to move. They can stay at their schools. And greater teacher retention. Thank you for your time. Questions?
I do have some questions.
Yes.
So of course I'm going to get the ESC parent phone calls.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've heard, which I was having a hard time believing, was that some kids were going to be allowed to stay at their current school, even if that school wasn't going to be, say, the 3 through 5.
Yeah. There are a few kids who are second graders, and it's different kind of at each school, but I did look at individual needs at that too. Like if it was a second grader who was going to have to move school for a year and then come right back the following year, I didn't feel that was effective for that particular student, that student's needs. So there are some second graders that did occur with, and there's a couple on this side and a couple on the LaBelle side. But that is not that was not like for every kid. That it was very case by case with that.
Well, like the story we hear is, was the kindergartner that's gonna get to stay.
Yeah, no, there are 2 second graders that I can think of on this side.
Okay.
And literally, they would have had to move for a year and come back, and I just didn't think that was appropriate for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's agreed. And what has been the feedback from the parents when you're rolling this out to them?
I've had a mixed bag of, I've had some emotions, tears from some families, just because they get very comfortable with the people they have, right? And the environment they're in. And then I've had some that were very open and welcome to it. They thought it was great, that they think that it will help their child being able to transition and be able to do some of those things. So we've had mixed feelings. Everyone has been very cooperative in working through things with us and sit down and talk with me. And I've tried to make myself available to do that. So, and if they're I've had a couple families maybe if I have 2 K2 units, let's talk. Maybe you like this setting better than this one. We'll talk about that. So we really are trying to meet them individually and address their concerns, and any concerns they have, try to put a plan in place for those. And if parents are calling you, please have them come. I will sit down.
I do,
with them.
but
Yeah, please have them. I
I
will
do.
sit down.
I was
we'll
like,
go through
you
it.
gotta reach out to your administration, but they gotta tell you the whole story first.
I know. Yes, but I'm happy to meet with them and do whatever I can.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
It's definitely a change, and so with any change comes uneasiness, but make sure you focus on the fact that, this might sound first, the academic drive. Now a teacher, from Mr. Brown's point, that was doing K through 5 curriculum, they had to know all that broad spectrum, they're gonna get to narrow down maybe 2 grade levels and do a much better job. With that, the age of the kids are more along the line, the academics are a narrow focus, and so we just know that this is gonna have a better impact on what said teacher's gonna be able to do with those students in class. Change, I get it, there's some people uncomfortable about it, but we believe and know that this is going to have a profound impact academically.
And there are many districts across the United States that have that model. It's not like this is a new thing. It just depends on the needs in your district. And I as a national consultant, I went on every school district in the United States of America. So there was many like this. Half the state of Texas is this way. I mean, it just depends.
Did you do air traffic control in your former life? Because this is incredible, right? How does she juggle this? This is.
I'm very organized.
I mean, that's mind blowing to see.
Well, I don't think people truly understand. They
No.
don't understand what is really being put on those teachers to try to figure out and do.
I had no idea.
That's why I
Thank
wanted
you.
to make them. But, we make those for every year for every
That's
year.
incredible.
But it's a lot of work.
Walk in the shoes, you really
Yeah.
don't.
And truthfully, you're seeing things on paper. Go visit.
Mhm.
It's a lot going on.
It's
Yeah.
incredible. Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Great job, Ms.
White.
White.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Superintendent, do we have any citizen comment on agenda items this evening?
I have none at this time.
All right, moving on to consent agenda. Are there any items that a board member would like pulled to action? Seeing none, Mr. Superintendent, do I have a recommendation on the consent agenda?
I recommend approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Motion.
Second.
A motion by Reverend Brown and a second by Mr. Basquin. Any further discussion? None, all in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda passes. Action items. Mr. Superintendent, do I have a recommendation on action item A, new personnel allocation request, additional teacher allocation to elementary?
I do, and let me just kind of give a brief overview for all of these because they all kind of fall under the same umbrella with regards to, again, we go back to the fact that we're a growing district. As we look at our numbers that we currently have, the numbers of enrollees and the number of students that are matriculating through our schools, we have to have more teaching units in order to be able to accommodate those. And as you can see, there's a cadre of different ones there from ESE to ELL students that we need to have more units to be able to service the needs of those students that are coming in here. Some of them are paraprofessionals as well, and some of them are just general ed teachers. So it kind of gives you the context of that. And so that we can stay in compliance with class size as well as provide the opportunity for these kids to learn. So that handles basically the kind of the background, broad background from items A all the way down through F, I believe. So I just wanted to make sure I kind of did that up front. If you have specific questions about either one of them, feel free to ask. I know I had a question earlier about funding, and they're from different places. Some of the ELLs are coming from federal and my grant. Some of the paras are coming from different places as well, and some of them, the teachers Some of them are general fund, so that the funding mechanisms are all over the place with regards to where they are, but all of them are aligned with the services or teaching that they're doing. So, having said that, Madam Chairman, I recommend approval of action item A, new personnel allocation request, additional teacher allocations in the elementary schools.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Besplin and a second by Ms. Houston. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Action item A passes. Mr. Superintendent, do I have a recommendation for action item B, new personnel allocation request, VPK teacher at Eastside Elementary School for the 2024 school year?
Yes, Madam Chairman, Board, I recommend approval of action item B, the new personnel allocation request for a VPK teacher at Eastside Elementary.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Reverend Brown and a second by Mrs. Houston. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Action item B carries. Mr. Superintendent, do I have your recommendation for action item C, new personnel allocation request, Para Grove Elementary School for the 23-24 year?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chairman and Board, I recommend approval of action item C, the new personnel allocation request for a paraprofessional at Upper Grove Elementary.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Basquin and a second by Reverend Brown. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Action item C carries. Mr. Superintendent, do I have your recommendation for action item D, new VPK pair at Eastside Elementary School for 23-24?
Yes, ma'am. Board, I recommend approval of action item D, a new VPK para for Eastside Elementary.
We have a motion? We have a motion by Mr. Basquin and a second by Reverend Brown. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, action item D carries. Action item E, Mr. Superintendent, do I have your recommendation for a new personnel allocation request to elementary ELL pairs for LES and UES?
Yes, ma'am. Board, I recommend approval of action item E, new personnel allocation request for 2 elementary ELLs and pairs at LES and UES.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Busen and a second by Reverend Brown. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, action item E carries. Action item F, Mr. Superintendent, do I have a recommendation for the new personnel allocation request for the ELL teacher at LaBelle High School?
Yes, I recommend approval of action item F, a new personnel allocation request for an ELL teacher at LHS.
Have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion by Reverend Brown and a second by Mr. Basquin. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, action item F carries. Action item G, Mr. Superintendent, do I have a recommendation for non-instructional support reappointment list?
Yes, Board, this is the non-instructional staff members that work at the schools, basically those not teachers. And so at this point in time, I recommend your favorable approval of action item G, the non-instructional support reappointment list as presented.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Busen and a second by Mr. Basquin. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, action item G carries.
Just look at them in the back.
I am just trying to go as quickly as I can. Action item H, Mr. Superintendent, do I have your recommendation for health insurance for the FSHIP medical risk sharing program?
Yes, ma'am. Action item H deals with the health insurance FSHIP program that we have talked about for a couple of board meetings. We have had presentations and you've met one-on-one with representatives. And so at this time, Board, I recommend approval of action item H, the health insurance FSHIP medical risk sharing program that, and bear in mind, this gives us the ability to move forward with gathering more data and bringing back an actual proposal. Along with this recommendation, I recommend that you allow the superintendent and chair to sign an authorization to allow FSHIP access to our Aetna data.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Busen and a second by Reverend Brown. I know that Mr. Samerdike had a statement. Would you like to read it?
He does. Mr. Samerdike was able to be here tonight, but he did send this correspondence that he would like to be read into the minutes. I was cynical of the concept of self-insurance. I was on the insurance committee when we had to move from self-insurance to insurance to Blue Cross. My major concern was catastrophic illness. At the time, we had a couple of employees with major illnesses that drained our insurance plan. At that time, contracting with Blue Cross was our best option. After speaking with the two gentlemen presenting our self-insurance program, I feel more reassured. They have a reinsurance program that protects the drainage of our insurance fund. I also communicated with the president of the HCEA, Ms. Ditt. She is currently on the insurance committee for Hendry County and expressed confidence in the new program being a benefit to both our employees and the district. Although I will not be at the school board meeting tonight and I know I cannot vote, I wanted to express my vision. I'm available if you want to text me or share my position at the appropriate time with the appropriate people. Thank you, and it would be appreciated. Mr. Simmerdike.
While on his European vacation.
I know, still working.
I don't even want to hear from somebody on a European
Sit that
vacation.
from Toledo
Oh,
Day,
he's on
I'm
a
sure.
cruise somewhere.
Yep.
All right,
It's
well,
okay. He
still.
still is being proactive, but is there any further discussion, any other questions for our folks? No? All right, then, I have my motion with our discussion, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Action item H, health insurance carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, board, and thank you, Mr. Brown and Mr. Powell. Appreciate your time, appreciate y'all being here. Look forward to moving forward with more data and information. Thank you in advance.
And if you'd like to sneak out, you're more than welcome. We're getting there
It's a
yet.
long drive, I know.
We know you have a long drive, so, but hopefully with no love bugs.
Yeah, right.
I always enjoy being English.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. Safe travels. All right, moving on to attorney updates. We have board member conduct. I know, Attorney Shattuck, you had a couple of policies that you wanted to review.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman, members of the board. So, recently we instituted some protocols, and I think that's going well. One thing that I spoke with the chairwoman about this, that we would like to try to do better at, which is something that, we can remind you of. And I don't actually think it's been an issue this meeting, but just waiting until the chair calls on you to speak. So just, so that people aren't interrupting each other or talking over each other. And it will also help me as the timekeeper during action items, because I do keep track of the time for 3 minutes per board member comment. So just to keep that in mind. And then another thing that I was asked to discuss is just board member policies. You have your bylaws that are the zeros that relate to board members. In terms of public comment, you all have, First Amendment freedoms of speech, but you also have some policies that give you guidelines when you are making a public comment. That could be in the media, it could include social media. So one of those policies, 0149.1, is public expressions of board members. And I just kind of want to highlight one thing in particular from that policy, which is that board members should, when writing or speaking on school matters to the media, legislators, and other officials, make it clear that their views do not necessarily reflect the views of the board or their colleagues on the board. And so this is something that comes up a couple of places in your policies. It also comes up in your policy 0124, and that's just something that you can use to distinguish between your own comments and the board. You also have in your policies that the chairperson acts as the board's spokesperson. So it's not really something that board members should be doing, acting as a spokesperson for the board. That's the chair's role, and if the chair does that, they should be doing it in line with, the district's views. So that's something that you can just make a simple statement, that some things are personal views, or, these are my personal views that not necessarily reflect those of the board. And a reason why this is important is just so that whenever you're communicating with the public, there's no confusion with the public between, what are the views of the district. You have 5 different board members and they may not all have the same views on everything. So just to keep that clear for the public. Also, if you look at your policy 0124, standards of ethical conduct, that touches on that as well. But, it also touches on a couple of other things that board members strive to achieve and sustain the highest degree of ethical conduct because they are aware of the importance of maintaining the respect and confidence of colleagues, students, parents, and other members of the community. So again, a way of doing that is distinguishing between your own personal views and those of the board. Also, making sure that, facts about educational matters aren't intentionally distorted or misrepresented in direct or indirect statements to the public, and just also keeping, the duty to promote the best interests of the district. Again, there's 5 different board members. You may have different interpretations of what the best interests of the district are, so that's where it's important to just, clarify when something is being spoken on your behalf and not necessarily on the district. Something else I wanted to mention, briefly touch upon, is there were some communications to the board members about a workforce committee to see interest by the board members, and I was asked, there are several board members who have expressed interest. Would it be appropriate to have numerous board members on the committee? And I advised no because of sunshine, because whenever you have more than one board member outside of a meeting done in the sunshine, you have to be very careful not to have any conversations where you may discuss something that may foreseeably come before the board. So I think that would be an issue, but something that you can bring back at your next meeting is just the board can decide who they want to be on that committee. So if any of you have any questions on this, I'm happy to answer them. Also, you can always give me a call anytime if you have any questions on how a policy or something applies. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's not too hard to realize that these comments are being made to me, and I'd like to provide a little clarification on the matter. So I'm gonna, I want my own packet of information here. If you wouldn't mind, I'll just take one and pass it down. So, first and foremost, and I think this was left off, and I do feel like it makes meets the standard of differentiating my comments from that of like the board. And it's, if you look on and a lot of people still are not using a laptop or a desktop. But when you click on my page, like the first thing you see right underneath my name, it says humbled and honored to serve Hendry County stakeholders. Opinions and views are expressed are my own. Also have that, like if you're looking at it, because your view on the phone is sometimes different from that. It's right there under like information. Is that, when I'm making some of these comments, is that going to be necessary? Do you want me to add that to the end of every single one of my statements?
Are you directing that to me?
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm looking for clarification here.
So through the chair to the members of the board, I was not specifically addressing any specific comment. So if there is a specific comment that you're thinking of, whether or not it applies, I'd be happy to look at that. These are just your general guidelines, so that the board members yourselves, should be aware of and implementing. There are things that guide your own behavior, so it's up to each individual board member to guide their own behavior in terms of these guidelines, although I'm always here for reference if...
I feel like I'm trying to differentiate myself with these comments that have been on there since our protocol meeting. I was like, okay, I get it. And then that's when I made the changes to that. But, I wanted to touch on that. And there's some other things in this. I actually put something together. It was quite spicy, but I don't feel like that's the direction that the vibe in the room tonight. So, I just want to make people aware, explain the things that I see on board docs, provide a Merriam-Webster definition of imply, and then see where it could be implied about the messaging on the half-cent sales tax. Also, I wasn't the only one who viewed it in that manner, perceived it, and I just wanted to provide some documentation that in Exhibit B5, and also support my claim in Exhibit B4 about the committee not being in place. Some of the workforce development, the first thing you're going to see at C1 is what I saw, the interactions that I was involved in. C2 is what's posted on board docs, which is not comprehensive. And then I'm gonna chew on somebody tonight, because when I looked at the response about that workforce advisory, I was hot, obviously. And then I looked at it a little more and I got inferno mad because, I was asked to join it. Then, the intervention came in there, and then I was told that somebody had applied first. It wasn't like merit-based, it was who got there. I said, I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want the board triangulated again and again. But what I'm wildly concerned about is that the discussion is not focused on policy 9140, which would be exhibit D1. Because this workforce advisory board shouldn't even exist at this point, because policy 9140 gives the board the authority over the establishment of such committees and states that all appointments of citizens to advisory committees shall be approved by the board. And if exhibit D2 is the meeting agenda for a meeting that occurred on April 27th, then the workforce advisory board was established and has operated outside of board policy. And so, my apologies for being outraged over feeling pushed out of a policy non-compliant citizen advisory committee.
Further?
Ma'am?
Anything further?
No, that concludes my comments on that.
Ms. Shadid, do you have anything to add regarding that policy?
Regarding policy 9140?
Yes.
Oh, through the chair. I don't have anything to add. My understanding is it's going to be brought back at another meeting, the Workforce Advisory Committee, and you all can decide it at that time.
That's my understanding.
Madam Chair, according to this agenda, I'm a little spicy about it, because I'm looking at the guidelines. Like, I got the initial welcome packet with information on it, but it's indicating that they've already held a meeting, and this community or citizen advisory committee has, just like what we've got coming up tonight for the half-cent sales tax committee. Well, that's a citizen advisory committee. Well, so is the workforce advisory committee. And I'm feeling like that hasn't even been established from board approval. Like, it just popped up and started operating road. And then I feel like this is where the miscommunication is coming. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it had popped up and said, okay, does the board approve, Mr. Superintendent Swindle says we want to have a citizen advisory committee for workforce development. These are the outlines, put all of that stuff in front of us like it was for the half-cent sales tax policy. But create that, the board's authority to create that citizen advisory committee. Because it says in policy 9140 that we have to approve everything. So the advisory committee has already been stood up, and according to the agenda, they've already had a meeting. So, without the board knowing about it or granting authority. And I feel like that's incredibly problematic.
So there has been a meeting?
I think a meeting last week or 2 weeks ago.
I put
Had
the
an initial kind of a welcome meeting and outline views and things like that.
And I put if you flip the page on D2, right behind that, you'll see the meeting agenda.
Right. So will this come before the board before this next proposed meeting of May 11th? No. So should they postpone this next meeting till we just have further discussion at the next?
Yes, we need to make sure that these are in compliance. If this was not, brought to the board for approval and the people on it, we will do that. Obviously, they did not, but we need to do that. Not a problem.
Are we supposed to have a representative from the board on that committee?
You typically have a representative of the board on the ones you choose, and yes, there needs to be one there as well. The problem is, it needs to
So
be
we need
one.
to choose a representative
Right.
at some point
Right.
before their next meeting.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be, so one, the fact that there's not one there, they're not spending, dollars at this point in time. Just more along the lines of programmatic things that are needed, direction of programs and things. You can do it either way. Ms. Shattuck's guidance was you can either do it at a regular board meeting, or you can reorganize, or whatever we all want to do it. But when we bring the official committee approval stuffs back to the board, then we can do that as well. Y'all can decide that, whatever your desire would be.
So let's put it on the agenda for our next meeting, if everybody's going to be present, or
It may be a June meeting, so we got, I know some schedules are starting to get wonky, so we'll have to plan it for the next meeting when we do it.
when everybody's going to be here, yeah, let's put it on the agenda for the next
Right.
meeting, that everybody's going to be here then.
Yep.
I mean, so we can have a group discussion on it.
And then, I'm sorry, I just violated requests.
You are actually one of the best ones that you are pretty good about.
The impulse controller.
Yes.
Goodness, I was telling Joe, I totally forgot where I was going with it. Advisory committee. Oh, and for policy like 9140, any board members that are part of that committee are in an ex officio manner. So they are not voters in it, or when their votes are taken of the board, they are just just kind of, not more than an observer, like you can get in there and mix it up, you just don't really have the ability to vote. Yeah. And then also be that conduit back from that committee to the board, which would probably be, I don't know about you guys, cool if they like reported back to the board and said, hey, this is what we've got going on in our workforce advisory committee or our sales
That
tax.
was sort of the goal.
Or something.
As you would with any of them.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back to us.
A rate committee that y'all sit on.
All right, any further discussion on that? All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to board member business, A, 2023-24 board meeting calendar that's been revised.
We had to revise some dates. If you go back and look at everything from calendar dates to school activities to calendar activities, we had to make an amendment there. So I recommend that you approve the 23-24 board meeting calendar revision.
Motion?
So moved.
Second. A motion by Mr. Basquin and a second by Ms. Houston. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have a new 2023 board meeting calendar. Board member business B, permission to advertise proposed policy revisions.
Yes, we have another round of policy revisions that have come to us. And in that, I recommend they are printed for your review and for you to review at your convenience and reading pleasure. So having said that, I recommend board member business B, permission to advertise the policies as presented in the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Houston and a second by Madam Brown. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, item B, we should advertise those policies, carries. Item C, Superintendent Swindle, City of Lewiston, notice of hearing May 15, 2023.
This is an FYI, no action item needed here. This is some property that we have on the western side of Lewiston. And back in September, you guys voted to enter into an annexation process that's going on with some of that city into the city of Lewiston. This is a hearing that they asked someone to be present for. I'll be happy to represent you there just in case at that hearing if there are questions from the public directed toward school board property. So just giving you the information that of when that is. So unless you had questions about it, that was just an FYI.
All right, Attorney Shattuck, did you have anything further for board member business this evening?
No, I did not. Thank you, Chairwoman, members of the board.
Thank you. Mr. Superintendent?
Sorry, my mic was on. So I'll go back to some of the comments that I made earlier this evening with regards to, we have 10 schools, with roughly 500 plus, maybe a handful more teachers than that. This is National Teacher Appreciation Week. and I respect every one of you on the board, but I also know that we all collectively respect the teachers and the work that they do. It's a hard job, it's rigorous. The changes that our country have gone through over the last couple of years through COVID and the mind frame of the way people think about education today is absolutely different than it was 5 years ago. The thing that keeps me up at night now is the fear of not being able, the trend of losing teachers and the teaching profession is absolutely frightening. We are doing things now like we've never done before with regards to recruit and retain teachers. We're looking in places where we never looked before outside the teaching preparation schools. And I am eternally grateful and thankful for the people that we have on our staff today that love what they do, they love kids, and they're moving education forward, and they're doing a phenomenal job of it, and they're giving of their time and themselves and everything involved. So I want to say thank you to all the teachers, and thank you to the work they do every single day. It's phenomenal, and we don't want that to go unrecognized. If you get a chance to thank a teacher, please do so. Yep, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll do my business first. Something that actually I learned from Mrs. Busen, and I highly respect her for this. Over the years, now that I've been the chair, this is my second year, I think it is important that we do our due diligence and make sure that we are getting, I'm going to just say, the best bang for our buck. So, Superintendent, I would like to ask you if you would put out an RFP for legal services and just see what you could bring back for us regarding our current services. Cost, expenses, services provided, what options do you have?
Okay.
I appreciate that. Second, I would like to do a recognition of our superintendent tonight. Superintendent Swindle recently completed the Chief Executive Officer Leadership Development Program. That is a mouthful. It means an acronym. But I just wanted to say congratulations. I don't know how many people are aware, but it just shows his commitment to the professional growth, which is going to provide and promote continuous improvement across the district. So I feel like he needs kind of a round of applause because I know it was a lot of work. Expand on a little bit about the program. What you do.
I can give
He's told me about it, but I couldn't do it justice.
I can give a quick overview of it. So this is something that the Superintendent's Association challenges us to find something that we want to challenge within our district that we feel like we can make an impactful difference in and do things along the way to make a difference there. We have a lot of people in the room that took part in this, and basically what we decided to do was to attack the African American male subpopulation group graduation rate at Clewiston High School. And Ms. Devonia Allen was very key. Mr. Sanchez was very key. Reverend Brown has become one of the key players. He learned not to say, "What can I do to help you?" So he got drug into it, kicking and screaming. And as a result, last year and currently, African Americans have the highest % graduation rate at Clewiston High School, and this program was a big part of it. Why? This year, and bear in mind what we specifically were at-risk young men. And so this year, we are hoping and pulling for, we may have 100% of that subpopulation group graduate Clewiston High School. So it's something that needed to be done for a long time. We uncovered some things along the way that's going to be phenomenal with regard to how we address these going forward through a mentoring program. More need for how we address it up front and through the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade before they get to be there. And then hopefully work our way to where we have less need for a mentoring program because we're doing a better job through our profession in those earlier years. So a lot was learned, a lot was put in place, and I've been asked to go to other districts and make the presentation. And so along with Miss Allen, I think we're going to go to a couple here. She didn't. Yeah, I got to tell her about some of that.
Surprise!
So, but I'm grateful for the help and the support. A lot of people throughout the district had hands on that. And I'm very proud of the results that we had there. And it was a long time coming. So thank you everyone involved.
And then just one more quick little shout out. I know they're not here, but I would like to recognize the LaBelle High School and Clewiston High School Decision Day ceremonies. They were phenomenal. So if you could take that back to your leaders and let them know, I just attending both of them, watching those kids, the pride beamed, and I really liked the way CHS had them walk across the stage and make them say their name and get all tongue-tied, and they didn't remember what university they were going to. That was pretty epic, but no, it was just, they were beautiful ceremonies, and congratulations, please. All right, that's all. Mr. Brown?
Both presentations tonight were awesome. I really appreciate that applause. I really learned a lot. But let me tell you a little story.
I love these. Go ahead, get to the microphone.
Listen to me good now. I was always a good kid. I wasn't one that stayed in trouble like that. But I was the oldest out of 7 children. And my dad had a way of coming, and he parented the best he could. He asked me about 15 years ago, is there anything you wanted to say to me, son, or ask me anything? I never caused him trouble, always did all the right things. But I had a brother that always stayed in something else. It was something to get in, he got into it. But my dad, instead of sitting him down, he lined all 7 of us up and chew us all out. I mean, and I'm sitting there like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm still getting chewed out, you know. So I said, it would be good, Dad, just get him and take him in the room and talk with him about what he's done. And that way I won't feel bad by having to get chewed out with him, and you know. So that's the end of my story.
What is the takeaway from that? I'm not sure. Do you have any further board member business or stories that you'd like to share? All right. Thank you, Reverend Brown. Mr. Festlin?
Yes, Madam Chair. The only thing I would like to say is Reverend Brown wants to volunteer to go with Mr. Swindle across the county.
Thank you.
No, I'll go with it. Thank you.
You said you have anything further tonight?
Yes. So I wanted to leap out of my chair when Mrs. White was talking about the direct instruction, and then how that they've seen these tremendous, like 500% gains in these very academically vulnerable populations. And that how, you know, she feels that helping these teachers develop this capacity to be successful and effective with these kids is going to help with the burnout and the teacher retention. And so I had the incredible fortune of meeting somebody who I love on Twitter because she is an amazing literacy advocate. And I thought she lived in Massachusetts, but now she lives in Broward County. And so I ambushed her, and then she didn't realize that she had a Twitter fangirl there, and was just, you know, just talking about her work. And so she's incredible. And, you know, I was talking about our population here, how we've struggled, and she and I both like deeply, deeply agree that the success that you're going to see in the high school grades are going to start, those foundational skills are going to start in the pre-K through the 3rd, and particularly with literacy. Literacy is that foundational block that opens everything up. Now, this lady, she's incredible. And when she was talking, I mean, she had people bawling. And I'm not going to say that I was one of them because I don't do that kind of stuff, but it was so impactful. And I asked her if she would be, if I could get our board together, if she can come and talk to us about the direct, not only the direct instruction that Art Gillingham, but the resources out there. Because she talks about, like, no matter how much professional development and stuff you're getting, if you know how to teach in this method, you can apply it to any curriculum. Like, it doesn't matter what curriculum comes to you, but if you have those teaching skills, and she's like, and she was rattling off, and I'm trying to write and stand there, but she was talking about how there are foundations out there who will pay for those teachers to get these certifications. I mean, it wouldn't have to come from us, you could work with them, but you pay these teachers, and then their ability to be successful and effectuate change, it happens. And it's not like this astronomical amount of money. It's a few $1,000s per teacher. But, you know, I can see doing that, like I think you're immediately, you know, within those first few years, you're going to be able to see it in your third grade scores. And she talks about how, I mean, she's become an expert on helping schools. She doesn't want any money for this. Like, she's doing it because she's fired up about it. But she is an expert on helping districts learn how to use their ESSER money, like what's left of your ESSER, because these are things that could pay, you know, to help support this, and helping schools get hooked up with these foundations that will pay for these teachers to get this. And, you know, what a gift, because I just can't imagine, you know, teachers are obviously not in it for the fame, fortune, appreciation, money, any of it. They're in there because they have this like innate drive to help kids and change lives. And probably the best thing that we can do is give them those tools to do that. And I just think that we have such an incredible resource so close who's willing to like come and talk to us and show us how it's being done. And she says, you know, our Title I schools are the best environment, the best case scenario for effectuating this change. And, you know, when I told her about, you know, our historical struggles in these areas, she was like, I would love to drive from Broward County to come over here and like meet and talk to your board and show them like what we could do to help and effectuate this. And I was just hoping, like, if I could connect her with a superintendent, that maybe we could, and the board chair, however you want to do that, cue this lady up, because I believe it's going to help add extra resources and a key foundational piece so we can have early success and continue to build on it.
So can I interrupt for just a second, because Mrs. Duncan needs to probably speak to that a little bit, if you guys don't mind, because we are in.
And I'm sorry, I've been fighting with stuff.
Would you like the mic?
I'll try. So we have, for the last couple of years since I've been here, really worked hard with the Orton Gillingham process and the science of reading. This school year, we piloted UFLI. I don't know if you've done any research on UFLI, but it's with the University of Florida Literacy Institute, and it is all about the OG methodology, the unbranded, of course, and really taking it back to exactly what you're saying, the direct instruction and how we're going to do all of those things. You'll be seeing soon. So we partnered with UFLI. We piloted one program, we partnered at Eastside, piloted at Eastside this school year, saw tremendous growth. January came, and in January, we met with UFLI, which is the University of Florida Literacy Program, and came up with a plan of how we wanted to then take that pilot and implement K-2 in every school in at least one piece. There was some struggles because not every school wanted to change everything in the middle of the school year. And so our goal was you must do at least one thing. It can be one grade across, it can be one class across, but you have to implement this program in some capacity. All of the coaches went through multiple trainings with UFLI Foundation, which is also sponsored by Jake Patterson. And we have now been bringing forward to you an agreement in which we will be signing or hoping to sign a data sharing agreement with UFLI, in which they will be mentoring all of our schools next year, K through 2, all grade levels, on just that Tier 1 foundational skills for all teachers of that systematic, strategic, explicit instruction. We had the pleasure of receiving a couple grants this year. We have bought every single, Ms. Allen has a picture, but you couldn't really see very well, that magnetic boards, letter tiles is all about the word work that they're going to be doing. I heard you say something about, teaching the teachers, and that's a lot of what our gaps are, is the teachers do the best they can, but they always know what they're missing. And so all about UFLI is taking it back. It's teaching the rules, it's teaching the teachers as we go, and the coaches have been embracing and in depth with this for months already, and so they are going to be the masters of that. But we also asked UFLI not to just provide us a train the trainer. We really want them coming in person and not just training the coaches and us expecting us to go back and do that, because we feel like there's fidelity, right? There's implementation fidelity. We want that collaboration with the university for the teachers to hear that what we're doing is systematic, explicit. It needs to be done the way it's laid out. You don't need to tweak everything. Don't overcomplicate everything. You need to new strategies we're teaching. So we are super excited about that. I've been working with Ms. White as well on the direct instruction and precision teaching and how that could look in our tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. And because that may not be practical for all tier 1 students, but UFI will be tier 1 across the board for everybody in K2. We're actually even mapping that into our curriculum so that is embedded within it. It's literally a non-negotiable for us K1 and 2 for next school year. So I just want to give you a little background. I've asked Ms. Collins, Mr. Swindle, Ms. Dr. Staley for us coaches to be able to present to you in August on the UFI and all of the things that we're doing in that partnership. So we will be bringing that forward to you. I would highly encourage you to do some research. There's a great Facebook group on UFI, but it's phenomenal things. It's all about science of reading. It's all about Horton Gillingham methodology. And I think it's going to very much, like you said, fill the gaps that we've been missing, teach our teachers the skills that they need, and we're going to see huge data growths with the fidelity of implementation and ongoing monitoring of that.
That sounds amazing because I know where we came from, and it broke my heart, literally broke my heart. And so one thing I would suggest is please somebody talk to this lady, because getting a person a certificate, Teresa DeWitt. She is.
If you don't mind speaking with me, and we will work that out. If you're that passionate, you really feel like it'll help, then let you and I focus where the help will be most.
I would love to see.
If it's the board, that's one thing, but really where the rubber meets the road is out there. So if you don't mind setting up with me.
I would love to, but please, I mean, that certification it's more in depth, I would believe, than a program, participating in a program.
And UFI is going to be training us all throughout it. It's ongoing coaching and training with them throughout the whole year.
I'm familiar with UFly, and I look at different groups and programs, and I'm not discounting it or criticizing it, but I'm just saying, like, there's some other resources out there. And
Is it you, like
University FLI.
Yeah, I didn't understand. No comprende. So sorry. Let's not even have that joke again. I'm sorry, but thank you. So I just know what to look for. Okay.
And then that concludes my comment.
That's it. All right. Last minute. Last chance. All right. Everyone drive safe. Meeting adjourned.